Hello everybody, and welcome back to the LJL Officially Unofficial Cast. I am your host, Alex, otherwise known as Alex, by MaskedSwan on the internet, and I got a book now. It's my Japanese Godzilla book.
Godzilla.
It's got the wave that's very famous. I can't remember what it's called. I plan, but not that much. I only started planning on bringing my book up at this moment. Anyway, I am joined by the gleaming Sam Hapgood, otherwise known as Initia1ise, and the sparkling Alex Hapgood, otherwise known as Nymaera. As I say in my cast, introduce yourselves, gentlemen.
I'm gonna have to start covering myself in glitter or something, although that's normally something I only do for my partners.
It's not Pride Parade yet, mate. You can wait off yet. Don't have to get it all in the hair. Thankfully, you're not like Sam and you don't have a huge beard. God, getting glitter off a beard.
I was trying to go for like the grungy look. I've got like my Linkin Park Meteora shirt on. By the way, it's 17 years old yesterday. Makes me feel very strange. It's my favorite album. But it's 17 years old yesterday. Really weird.
Yeah, introduce yourselves. Hello.
Yeah, no, I'm Nymaera, as always, colorcaster for this stuff. I've been crunching some numbers this time, so I actually have like some, I have some stats which aren't from Gamepedia. Yeah, I've had some coursework to do recently, so time's been a little bit short, but obviously playoffs round one were so entertaining, so I pulled out the extra kind of couple of hours of work and did some stuff.
Initia1ise?
Yeah, I am initially Sam. I am the colorcaster's older brother, and generally superior.
Sam, can you just...
I kid. We're all pretty good on this cast. It's great to be hanging out and doing another podcast post playoffs round one, which we're...
Is he quiet to you too, Lexi?
Yeah, he's just gotten quieter somehow.
I don't know why that is.
I think that's because you're leaning back and not talking into the mic. I believe
might well be that.
Might be a potential solution to your...
I was getting really comfortable, but that was all it was.
That's it. Just like slowly sliding down the seat as the slouch increases.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay, I'll actually sit forward a bit more then and make sure actually, and that you'd think, as someone who's done a fair amount of music tech, I would understand how microphones apparently.
Is he still quiet?
He's still so quiet.
He's still quiet. Okay, maybe it's a mic thing.
Maybe just mess around with the settings on my mic.
Okay. Well, Sam will get back to us. And
while Sam does that, I'll do the boring podcast noise stuff that I have to do. So, what is this podcast? It's the LJL Officially Unofficial Podcast. This is where we cover everything around the LJL and League of Legends and League Pro scene. Within later casts, we might start talking about other weeby stuff and just fun stuff, because content's going to become more difficult, but we'll find out over the coming few days and weeks as it does go on. We, over here at the Officially Unofficial, are not affiliated with Riot Games, nor Riot Korea. Everything said on this cast is our own personal point of views, and technically does not represent the LJL Officially Unofficial, as that's our stream, whereas this podcast is our own thoughts. It's weird. I've realized this is something I should start doing when I was listening to Pog State, so I was like, I'll start doing this. By all means, please check out our social media. We got a Twitter, we do have a Facebook page, but forget about that. We have an Instagram that we actually vaguely more updates, so check out that one. We also have a Discord, which we are very active in. We are trying to bring features to it that are very unique and are not.
Lexi's been working overtime on that. It's going to be really cool, guys.
Cool stuff, really man.
Cool. Once it gets working, it's still not working how I want it to work.
Almost cool.
But it's like, but it actually has some functionality right now.
Oh, it's vaguely doing it. So exciting stuff is coming. I'm hoping to try and get it done before next playoffs. So within a month, obviously. We've got loads of time for it, but we'll obviously keep you all updated on our podcast. And obviously, podcasts are a thing of a time capsule in and of themselves, and we are now right into the mix of the COVID-19 virus. As our listeners are well aware from our voices, we are British, we are Englishmen. And our country is now on full lockdown, as it would be right now.
Which means more time for LJL stuff!
Woo!
Basically, yeah. LJL, League of Legends, just everything around the game. I mean, we've got far more time and less responsibilities than ever before, so I mean, fuck it. LJL, why not?
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, we're all trying to like keep safe and all the other stuff, and we'll keep you updated if anything.
Wash your hands, people. Remember the full 30 seconds. Do the what's the song I do? Oh, hum the Simpsons theme song. If you hum the Simpsons theme song the whole time you're doing it, that you begin to wash your hands, you'll be perfectly clean.
Oh, really? That's a good question. Yeah, obviously, I worked in the NHS very briefly last year. I was doing some receptionist stuff. So, to be honest, even in the best of times, you should be doing this stuff. But now it's just been highlighted. Just don't take a chance with it, guys. It's as you all know, it's not necessarily your own safety that you have to be worried about. It's everyone else around you and everyone you come into contact with. So please, please, please do your due diligence.
Yeah, and for those of you who can stay home, do stay home. That's not to say, some people don't get that choice, and in that case, wish you all the safety in the world. But for the rest of us, we're going to be inside a little bit, so, get out once a day for some exercise if you have to, but apart from that, stay in your damn house.
Yeah, you essential workers out there, you're doing literally God's work out there, from the cashiers, still in supermarkets, over to the doctors. Shelf stockers. People doing deliveries, someone like my sister, honestly, crazy to think, but like she's such an important part now, so people don't leave. It's like, really, honestly, thank you to everyone out there. And also thank you to like Twitch streamers and entertainers, because then you're at least giving people something to be engaged in and take their mind off of this horrible time, which is what we're sort of doing right now. Not to toot our own horn.
Oh, we're taking their mind off of it by mentioning it. Maybe it's like the whole don't mention the war, Faulty Towers.
Oh yeah, it's 100% that.
I mean, on the bright side, it means there's more time for people to be. You didn't have to book off time off work to go and play Animal Crossing and Doom.
That's very true.
All of that crossover material between the two communities has been just amazing.
It's been so good.
Oh my god, have you seen the mod that's on Steam where you can have Isabel ride your gun in Doom?
Yes!
She literally rides your gun, and she comes out and you can like poke her, and she goes, and then she just literally rides your gun as you shoot and kill people. I'll see if I can find the mod.
Perfect. Rip and tear until only Isabella's left. Perfect.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. This is the wrong games, by the way. We're very much
on
League of Legends right now.
But we might talk about them more in depth later, because why not? LJL playoffs might become difficult after everything, and we don't know what will happen once Pro Play finishes for us in end of April. So anyway, this podcast episode, we're going to be first talking about playoffs. We've had round 1, so we're going to be covering the games of V3 versus Axis and Rascal Jester versus Crest Gaming Act. Following that one, V3 Esports versus Axis. I should use their full titles. Round 2 for playoffs is also coming up this week for us. Yeah, so very exciting time. We're going to give our perspective and opinions about those matches. If you haven't watched those matches, we would first like to say go watch them. It's all on our YouTube. You have no reason not to watch them with full English. You can literally be AFK and watch them. If you can't be bothered, we will give you a very quick synopsis of what happened, and then our expectations moving deeper into playoffs. It's getting exciting, people. We're then going to have a little bit of meta talk, and then a new section to the podcast, which we agreed on. It's going to be a somewhat part of small talk, but it's going to be question time for the corner. I don't know. We'll figure it out. This is where our community has asked us a few questions, and we're going to answer it. If you have any questions for us, just kind of random stuff that you're not really sure what our opinions are of them. Now we're literally opening up to our Discord. There is a specific time. One of us will ping everybody, normally 24 hours before the podcast, so people are getting their more immediate ones, and one question per person. If you ask multiple questions, we'll probably just take the first one you ask, and then
unless we have extra time, then who knows? We'll see. We will try and get through everything that we can, but
exactly.
I was going to call them the unwashed masses and realize that's not true anymore, because you're all going to be washing your damn hands. So it's all good.
I mean, they're adoring, so it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
But all right, so big one, playoffs. Round 1 has officially happened, finished. We've casted it. V3 versus Axis. Gentlemen, your thoughts on this match?
Oh, man alive.
Yeah, where do we start with this one?
There's a man in the jungle, and he's a myth. And he comes out like whenever the moon sort of like disappears and like red moon rises. It's like, that moment
That's sounding like Diana,
Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild. When the red moon comes up and all of the monsters respawn. That's like basically what happens, but Buki turns up.
Oh, I was getting like Minecraft with creepers, because
and he was really really damn good. I think he had a KDA of 22 over the course of this series. Like he was absolute nutter. He played an Italy game. He played let's see what else he played in Italy. He played
Lee Sin and Rek'Sai.
5-0-14 on it. He had a Rek'Sai game. Like the fact he pulled out in Italy and kind of ran over it was pretty amazing.
So
also, specifically Ace and Paz turned up and looked good.
So let's rip off that band-aid.
Mm.
V3 won 3-0
Yes.
versus Axis. That's why Sam only said 3 champions for Boogie, because it was a 3-0.
Yeah, it was. And obviously, like, Axis, they're kind of our sweethearts in a lot of way, and we love you, Corporal. He's in our Discord, we like talking to him. He's a really nice guy. But, you know, I don't think none of us predicted that Axis would win. We thought it was a really hard draw. We thought that if they were on the other side versus Rascal Jester, would have been a much more close affair for them. It didn't look particularly close, I don't
Sadly
think.
not. No. I think part of it was like Axis. Like we assumed V3 were going to win. And actually, a lot of V3's veterancy showed through in a way that I think a lot of Axis looked quite nervous being on the big stage. Like a lot of these players, it's their first time in a playoff situation. I know Corporal, I think, has been there with Direwolves before, though.
I believe so.
I might have to correct that possibly later. And they looked a bit out of sorts. They were too aggressive in the first game, going for plays that just weren't working out. They were under aggressive in game 2. And like, it's just one of those things where they were just struggling to find their feet in the series. And by the time they were kind of nearly there, it was just too late. And a lot of the guys on V3 stepped up. Like Ace in particular looked very good, which was not something I expected coming into this series. His Syndra in particular was pretty monstrous.
I'd agree.
So yeah, it was an odd mix of V3 turning up and looking really, really good, and the players we expected to look good being that, and then the players we didn't expect also being good, and Axis kind of just being a little out of sync.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to like direct the conversation towards any different facet of it, or you just want us to let us like free roam upon the territory of this series.
Free roam. I mean, if you want to go in by match, if you want to
we can do that. Unless there are any big. I mean, I think okay. So I'll have a little segue here then. So if we go into match 1, one of the things that we came into this draft was thinking is like, and one of the things that we said in I think it was the episode or some of the broadcasts before it is, how deep does the champion pool of Boogie go in terms of its effective carry pool?
That was episode 7.
Episode 7, yeah, okay. So it would have been the last one. And how much is left? How much is left in the Boogie tank? So in this game, he has Echo banned away from him. He has Jarvan banned away from him, and he has Elise banned away as well. And there's also a Silas targeted at him. He picks
maybe
in their
Nocturne
last
as well.
round.
Why not?
Nocturne as well, technically. Yeah, although
Flex,
that's normally gone towards Ace.
Boogie does play it. He's played it a lot.
He played it last year on Flash Wolves, actually.
He
Yeah,
did. He played it a lot on the Flash Wolves. So we know that team plays Nocturne.
yeah. So then we were kind of questioning. Okay, right. So this guy has kind of had a lot of his different champions taken away, and the Rek'Sai is locked in. Is locked in for Hoglet. So what does he want to do if he wants to pick like a carry jungler, quote unquote? And he picked up Nidalee. So their full draft was it was Set, Nidalee, Syndra, Senna, Tahm Kench, and they were against Kalista, Rek'Sai, Azir, Varus, Taric, and he just kind of popped off on this pick. Really, he found Hoglet in the early game. He ended up orchestrating a couple of dives on the bot side, which put down the Varus and the Tahm Kench, and then Archer and Reyna really popped off during that game. And then, even though this game wasn't really about him, I think Ace had a pretty good game, huh?
Yeah, he did. 7-0-2 on the Syndra. Absolutely ran over the game. So as another bit of context, Uinyan from Axis had picked up the Kalista top, which is something we've seen coming out the LPL, particularly the Shy was the guy who basically said, yo, just saying Kalista with Sanguine Blade and Blade of the Ruin King is utterly ridiculous right now. And he did come out, and it was versus the Set, came up to an early lead, but what happened was Axis had set up vertical jungling. Hoglet was on the top side of the map. Recalled. Boogie finds his way over the back of the Baron pit at like 3:30. Gets in behind all the wards and
Ace
the Rift
roams up as well.
Ace roams up as well, and they shut Uinyan down multiple times in the early. Behind the line of vision, Hoglet wasn't there. It was a 3v1, and the Kalista got put in a bit of a hole. And put in a hole for a Kalista. The idea is that you get really far ahead on the solo lane Kalista. So far ahead, you're just kind of unmatched. That never really happened. She was strong, I guess. Came out with a fairly significant CS and gold lead. But we basically, every time she tried to push, we'd just find a Syndra and an Nidalee there to slap her in the face.
Yeah, and then after a while, like, you had Senna and Tahm Kench being able to affect the map very globally with both of their ultimates, and that meant that there was never really a true 1v1. Never really came out to that kind of sense. And it's worth noting that a lot of these stranger top lane matchups are coming out into the Set lane, because Set can be somewhat abusable in a 1v1, even though he is good at brawling with certain champions. We've seen Evie be really good as level 1, for instance, with his Facebreaker. But this is why like all of these support champions like Janna, Karma, Soraka, Sona top managed to survive into Set. So he doesn't necessarily have the way to punish range champions that some of the other top laners have, like Aatrox. Aatrox is really good into those matchups where Set isn't. So Kalista is another one in this long train of champions which we're really not sure should be a top lane, but have made their way there anyway.
I mean, there are certain pro players in the LJL that are playing her actively in the top lane at the moment.
Yeah,
so, I mean, solo queue and this time that they have, it definitely seems like...
I mean, Kalista top
Appaman has been playing it in...
It screams Appaman.
Oh, I'm not surprised
he's
Appaman's
playing
been
it on.
great.
He was playing it on stream a few weeks ago. So like,
well.
I mean, and remember, he's got that.
Who loves the stat?
I mean, exactly right, and he knows he's against DFM for that first one, but we can get into that topic later. I wanna kind of just direct the conversation in a different way, in a way that you've started it. This game kind of basically painted how the rest of the games went. Game 2 went a little bit better, but not much, and then Game 3 arguably was just as bad as Game 1. What was going on really with the comp of Axis? And feel free to go more depth into the games, but using that as a way of kind of tying them together.
Okay, so from what I could see, Game 1, it really screamed nerves from Axis. We were really high on them coming into playoffs in a lot of ways. I thought that Galliardo and Hoglet were amongst the best mid-jungle 2v2s that we had in the league. I think that Hoglet was one of my favorite junglers. I think I power ranked him actually at second or something in my whole jungle tier list. Unfortunately, he's up against Boogie. He didn't have the impact that he would really have liked. There were a couple of times, there was one time where he tried to dive Paz on the Set underneath bot outer turret. It was a 2v1 dive. He got counter ganked by Boogie at the same time, ended up losing like 2 kills, losing a lot of time, losing an ultimate or 2. And like, it just, everything was misfiring. Whereas Axis, I would have praised them for knowing where and when they were in a match, if you get what I mean. Like, okay, knowing where they are, where they need to get to in terms of win conditions, and then acting upon that in terms of the dragons which are available and all the other stuff. That really didn't come around in this game. Axis tend to lose control when they get dived on the bot side of the map. If they do get dived on bot side, it just kind of falls apart. That happened this game, as we were saying, with the Nidalee and all that other stuff. And they just never settled into game 1. Game 2, slightly better. We actually saw that same dive which failed in game 1 in terms of it worked out in game 2. But then effectively, like, I mean, the bot lane of V3 were doing really well. They were never really put behind. Paz had a couple of deaths, I'm sure. But then Boogie just popped off.
5-0 and 14 on least. And, like, this game was probably the closest one. I think
it was,
there was a gold lead for Axis for a certain amount, but they could never really snowball it because Boogie was finding ways into fights.
I mean, they got Dragon Soul.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah, they did, and
probably lost, but
it was Infernal Soul.
They got it.
Infernal Soul as well, right? It was a good soul, but like the issue was that V3 in particular, where we've kind of praised them for being a snowball team and like snowballing really hard, really fast, and struggling when they don't. This was when we saw a bit of development from V3. From behind, they found a way to not only get back into the game but win it. And they were actually through very good team fighting, and I think a lot of that was Ace turning up when they needed him and not being kind of a bit of a non-factor, which he has been in a number of series, and Paz continuing to ramp up. We knew this guy had kind of been a bit of a big game player in the past, and he's turning up. His set and stuff was pretty phenomenal, and
so then
survived some awkward laning phases and turned up in team fights and ran people over.
So then I imagine people like myself who, I mean, obviously I'm well aware of what's going on, but I imagine the question some people might have is like, okay, well they had their nerds game 1. Seems like they kind of figured out some form of play style or something that was working in game 2. Why did you say, Alex, that game 3 went just as bad as game 1? What was happening? What did the V3 do to counter whatever they were doing, or did Axis just play like it was game 1?
So, I think in game 3, I think this is one of the times where one of the few times in the split where I think they had a poor draft in a lot of ways. I think when Unyan ends up on Camille, which he has kind of defaulted to after he loses the Aatrox, his laning phase suffers, and Paz had one of his better laning phases
Yeah,
we've
he
seen
did.
all split that game. He ended the game on 3-0 and 11. Boogie picked up a load of early kills on the Rek'Sai once again. And they had just a really hard to execute composition. They weren't playing around. So in game 2, they played around a Syndra, slightly easier to execute on. Game 1, it was an Azir in the mid lane. Game 3, it's an Orianna. And as much as I think Orianna has a lot of potential in the mid and late game, she takes a while to ramp up, which means that against an early snowball team like V3, sometimes can kind of leave you out to the wilds for a little bit of the game where you're just kind of hoping that everything tides over. It didn't in this game.
Sure.
And then you have to start trying to look for the perfect snowball. Archer was on Callista that game. Not snowball. Shockwave. I've been playing too many ARAMs. That one. And then Archer was on Callista. Ace was on Echo. There's a Rek'Sai. There's a set support. There's an Aatrox top. All of these things have mobility. And then that means you always get out the Shockwave. And then also there are a lot... and Echo can actually 1v1 the Camille at points as well. So effectively, they have a side lane champion which really can't affect the game the way that they want to unless they get absurdly fed. Did end up teleporting in for a couple early kills that game. It just never really amounted to the 1v1 lead that they wanted, because Paz was doing so well at just kind of... He built Death Stance first, actually, just to kind of stave off that 1v1 pressure so he could keep sustaining up in the laning phase. And then, like, Gadeadu on the Orianna just never was in a position to hit multiple people because they were just too slippery. And then I think that really affects their ability to use their composition.
I think also there was a bit more of a meta point. Axis are really good when they can sort of have a read on what's going to happen. They're very good when they're all on the same page, can be decisive and answer or execute on their plans or their opponent's plans. They're really good when they do that. This game this series rather, with some of the nerves, their decisiveness was sometimes a bit disjointed, whereas V3's was anything but. When V3 were decisive, they were decisive and really damn ruthless about it. They were really, really quick to capitalize. So Paz, Boogie, Ace in general were always when a team fight was happening, they would be there first. They would be executing on the same page faster. And Nguyen would be like half a screen away because he was on the right page, right, but just that page behind. And it would just be like he'd be turning the page while V3 was already there, or Axis in general. And that kind of meant that a lot of the team fights of V3 were winning. They just got to do it on their terms.
Sure.
And particularly in game 2 when Nguyen was on the Aatrox. This is where, like, in the game before, Axis pulled the trigger before they were kind of ready for it. It would just be a bit of a shambles as they all engaged. Hoglet would get thrown in with the Callista Fates call, and then no one else would be there. He'd get deleted, and they all sort of die 1v1.
I also think that
they were just a little bit not quite quick enough because they were trying to make sure they were more coordinated, and it just meant that V3 were a little bit more together and faster getting.
And game 3, they just didn't play the game slow enough as well. Like I said, they had the Orianna, they had the Camille. They kind of turn on about 2-3 items. They were fighting way before that, and they were just trying to throw punches instead of rolling with them. And I think that really kind of... I think they lost control of... They lost vision of what they really wanted to do in that game in terms of win conditions. Like, well, okay, are we going to wait? Are we going to fight around this area of the map? And that kind of fell apart. Whereas V3, I think that the way that they draft, it gives them so many early tools. They do play towards their early game junglers. Nidalee is an early game jungler as well. Don't make a mistake with that. She farms really well, but she loves kind of destroying people on the first clear. And Biggie did a lot of work with that.
So, with this all said, V3 won dominantly. There's no way around that. There was rarely much of a congestion, and even in game 2, the congestion, it didn't seem to really get them the win. There was still a 10k gold deficit, even in the game where they get Dragon Soul. Doesn't look great, especially being 10 kills down as well. With that said, we have discussed off-cast who our player of the series for this is going to be. And I mean, I don't know if you're surprised, but a certain gentleman called Initia1ise might have been singing their praises from the minute 1 that I handed it over. And of course, I'll let him introduce who our player of the series is.
Yeah, it is absolutely V3's Boogie. This guy has been
choral music in the background.
Superstar, all split. From week 1, he's been brilliant. And he's kind of continued to ramp up. And like for the longest time, he was V3's sole win condition. He's not anymore. And he's kind of glad to have some teammates alongside him. But even when he's doing that, he's still looking pretty fabulous. KDA 2 playing a lot of other champions, pulling out some new tech as well. and really sort of led the team of V3 to victory here with pretty phenomenal performance.
Yeah, and Boogie, as a jungler, doesn't have the highest DPM. You don't end up getting as much golden items as you do in other roles. So he only had a DPM of about 352. For instance, comparing it to the highest person on his team, Archer, who had 503, it's a fair amount. What Boogie does, though, is make sure that he is always impacting the game more than his opponent. The differential between him and then Hoglet on the other side, 138 DPM.
Ooh.
So that's like an extra 25% damage that he was doing at any given point in time throughout the entire series. That's across all 3 games. He just really gets in the thick of things. He had a 22 KDA while doing this. It's absurd to think he can really play so many of these like melee brawler / assassin / not tanks, survive, do damage, do a damn better job than his opponent in this series as well. Hoglet, I love you, but you got a bit out jungled this series. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's not surprising when it's against our MVP player of the whole spring split, the regular split, as well as then coming into this. It's like you're against the guy that, like, in our opinion, is like one of the best players currently in the league. So I mean,
this guy could genuinely be an international threat if they make it there. That's what we're thinking.
He has been an international threat. Like,
yeah, but from this team, we know he's done it on Flash Wolves, but doing it from this team as well would be something else.
We'll have to wait and see how that goes. Our second match of round 1, or our second game rather, of round 1 is Rascal Jesters versus Crest Gaming Act. And this one went the full 5, but it ended up going in the favor of CGA. That's Crest Gaming Act in a nail biter last game, which kept us pretty back and forth. This was a series that had a lot of twists and turns. Rascal Jester choosing to always play on red side after their first win on blue side, I believe. And then it was just such a weird series, just such a confusing series, and not how I expected it to go at all. Gentlemen.
I actually kind of expected it to go this way, to be honest. I was like, I think we all expected it to go 3-2, I believe.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember.
I think it was just the manner in which it would. I think we were kind of half expecting snowballs either way, maybe. Whereas this was really tightly contested, pretty much every game.
I will say, game 1, absolutely not what I expected.
Yeah.
What we saw in game 1 was Arya get solo killed. We saw that Ninja have a huge game on Ornn, and the game just kind of fell apart around those
solo kill
kind of
on Ornn when he played Akali. Stop playing Akali.
Yes, he did.
It's all right.
And then also, Art got his hands on Aphelios and chugged out. Let me go find the where's his DPM? He had a DPM of 601.
Okay.
Which when we were saying like, oh, Archer's average DPM was 503. Art in the first game, and that's not even hit. We'll get into it later.
Not even his final bloody form.
It's not even his final. It's like his second lowest DPM. Like Art came out with a DPM of like 602, and just kind of took on all comers and just took them down. Really, this was it was back and forth in a lot of ways. There were some team fights which Crest was setting up for, which could have gone very differently. A lot of kind of like trying to get deep vision with wards, TP into them with Nap and Arya, and then try and play something around that. They very nearly worked out. There was one time where Arya mistimed a stopwatch from Vivid playing Morgana, and it was just half a second off of getting a kill, which might have ended up snowballing into something a little differently. Didn't end up that way. I think that the real shining star from Crest that game was actually Nap on the Renekton. He ended up like killing Kogok, who played Nico that game like 3 odd times. Ended up becoming a real side lane mismatch. But I mean, just Art and Ninja were very, very strong in team fights, and they were too much to overcome in game 1.
I think it was also an element is when we came into this series. We just come off the back of the V3 series, so both games happened on the same day, and like V3 Axis, it was kind of, that was the death of the Cinderella story. It was Ash hitting the Indigo League, and kind of realizing there's a little way to go. Little way to go, you know. And
the Pokemon reference, I appreciate it.
But this series was something a little different when basically it came in and it was an utter slugfest, and we kind of expected certain mismatches in certain areas. We expected Arya to be a monster in the mid lane. We expected Hachimecha to have a bit of an good matchup versus Yoshi, and we were a bit worried about Grendel in his position. This was the game where Hachimetra got massively ahead for Elise in the early game. And Hachimetra with information is a very terrifying junker. He's a little bit more mortal when things are kind of even in the information game. When he gets information, what he does with that is disgusting. This was a game where Rascal Jester had all the information, and that Elise kind of ended up going 1-4 and 2, was monumentally behind the Olaf, even if the Olaf's 3-2 and 3 scoreline doesn't quite show that. I think Hachimetra made that Elise completely irrelevant in a lot of ways. There was one time where he flashed to secure a kill, failed to, and then died for his sins, and that was kind of the biggest play that was happening that game from the poor Elise.
Sure.
But apart from this game, really, Yoshi stepped the hell up. Looked really good, actually, for a lot of this series. And Grendel as well was a lot, was playing aggressively, but was making it seriously work. And a lot of we were worried about those rookies, and they turned up for Crest Gaming Act in a way that in another world would definitely have lost it, because Rascal Jesters as well played their best damn games they have all split.
So there is a question I've been pining to ask you both. Cog, okay? The top laner of Rascal Jesters had been pretty consistent and on. Played a bit of Gnar, Mordekaiser. We'd even seen some we saw a Kale game. Yeah, Kennen as well. Why such a switch? Because, dear listeners, Cog went from the very standard top lane kind of play pool to playing Nico and Karma for 4 out of the 5 games. Yeah. I can't help but feel like that had such an impact overall on the team in a negative way.
Okay, so I think that the Nico, it really fell apart against Renekton and Elise, which is what
I mean, they're lucky that they won that lane.
They were very lucky.
Everybody else.
Nico almost became a lose condition. We talk about win conditions, but when you have someone who's so far behind their opponent that they end up ceding all pressure, they kind of become a lose condition. He ended up having some pretty good team fights at the end of the game, I guess, but he ended up getting 0-3-0 and having to bring it back from then.
I will say, actually, they ended up having, so Vivid on that game was playing Morgana, and effectively what Cog did is eventually, he had a crap laning phase, but hit the sort of mid games around Dragon fights particularly, and you saw what the Cog was supposed to do, because he picked up the GLP and the Twin Shadows on the Nico, and Vivid on the Morgana, and it basically meant that CJ couldn't find their way into any objective fight ever again.
I mean,
so
I think that was,
a bit crap.
I think Hachimetra and Ninja were already doing that, arguably by just being so much further ahead than everybody else on the side of CGA.
I think in game 1, Ninja and Hachimetra really carried that game super hard. Because Yoshi became irrelevant.
Morgana afterwards as well, because they
I think Art and Vivid also played a big part. I just don't think, I think Cog just was a zero impact in that game.
I don't know, because I mean the Twin Shadows made a lot of difference, because it kind of meant that Arya was forever
but what about, but then you have to also remember, take that champion, then put almost any other champion that Cog could have played in that spot, and go, would it have had just as much? Would it have had?
I don't know. I like it as part of the composition.
So let me just think about this in a little bit of a different way, because I do think that Cog ended up having a really bad early game, and that effectively brought Nap into the game. As just the gold being put onto Nap meant that this Renekton was really scary coming into team fights. For me, what was really the telling thing though is when LeBlanc is banned and Arya wants to play like an AP assassin, he has been going towards the Akali, and it's just not reliable. It's not reliable because mechanically he is proficient. I think so. We saw in their last game of the regular split, not including the tiebreaker, it was versus V3, where Arya was playing the Akali. Ended up having some good team fights. The early game was a little bit
3-1 and 3. I think he went on the Akali.
Yeah, and he looked good in that game. That's the last time we saw him play that. Obviously, didn't play it in the tiebreaker. When he's bringing it out and trying to affect these big team fights with so many note buttons, having an Ornn, having Morgana with Black Shield for the extra bit of HP and a stopwatch as well, having a tanky Olaf to go through as well, he just unless he's absurdly far ahead, you end up getting the Lexi
Yeah.
point of view of just screw this champion, don't play it. And
Yeah.
I'm
Don't
glad this is
play
the early
her!
game. I think it's okay into certain comps when you get the early
Just
snowball.
play her in
But when you're
solo
dying
queue.
but like there was a point like where he died, burning flash, burning ult, and Akali ult is so important in the early game because it is a long cooldown.
Yeah.
It's not as long as it used to be before the rework. That was the thing which really gated her.
I like.
But when you're playing this champion and losing pressure early, like it really does affect your team. And even though he had some very close team fights, never really capitalized. And that meant that like if Akali can't buy space in team fights, Gango, who's playing Varus this game,
Fights. Yeah, it's a great market.
but gotta buy the spice in team fights. Varus, I don't know. But yeah, Gango just couldn't really do enough damage that game. And
I mean, I also want to give a real shout out to Vivid as well, because basically Arya's sole aim that game, it felt like, was to assassinate the Morgana, and Vivid had some really clutch stopwatches, and the exhaust. Oh my days! Every time Arya tried to go in, he would be exhausted, couldn't pull off the damage, and would end up having to try and pull his way out. Arya went 0-3-4, didn't really manage to get much done. And eventually, what happened was like there was, I think, so what put Cog behind, if you remember, was he wandered down to try and help Hachimetra with the Rift Herald and find a Renekton at least waiting for him in the bush. And that was the only way that CGA got relatively back into the game, was effectively burning all the summoners from Cog and getting the Renekton at least into kind of a bit of parity suddenly again. So that I can't remember whether they did get the Herald off. They did get a Herald off that. I don't know. No.
I think they got first Herald.
Did.
Yeah,
They did get first Herald. So they got Herald off that as well. So that was how they got back into the game, was plates and the So that was the only thing that kept them in that for a long time.
Just the interest of like keeping things more about like meta about the series though, because this is only game 1. There are
says a lot.
5 games, right? Ninja really went towards this on quite a lot. He went for it for the first 2 games in this series, and then it was banned afterwards. Really, he was having such an impact on team fights. It ended up, and Ornn is such a nullifying pick as well. We talk about, like, in seasons past, we talk about Gnar being, like, this unmovable top laner. Some of the mid laners kind of fall into that same category as well, like, I don't know, Orianna in seasons past. But then, like, there's Ornn, when you're playing against Adia, who's trying to, like, solo kill everything in sight, it means that it just removes that option, and CGA kind of suffered for that in the first game. Second game, though, I think that, Lexi was talking about how Cog was kind of like, what the heck's on with this champion pool? This is when they start picking up the Karma top. It really helped Art and team fights, didn't help their top side pressure.
They lost all 3 matches on the Karma.
They didn't. They because Vivid.
No,
had
they
a winning...
did. They lost. I'm literally looking at this. So
there was one in support. There was one in support.
One support for game 4.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I mean Cog.
In top lane. In top lane. Yeah.
We're talking about Cog. So yeah, every time
sure.
Cog played Karma,
you are right.
they lost, and it's like.
Yeah.
Like,
you can't. I literally watched the games, and he goes 0-3-9 in the final game. He went 1-3-2 in the third game. Like, these are not results. Like, I can use data and be like, results orientated thinking. Go, he's not an impact.
I mean that. Yeah. So
But like, what he's just like not doing. It's like it doesn't feel like this is a champion he's doing much on.
But I will raise you 1 point here. So game 2, we see Karma, and what does Karma do? Buffs up an AD carry. Have a guess at Art's DPM in game 2. Have a guess. Game 1 was 601, by the way, and that was high. Guess his one in game 2.
I guess about 650.
850.
879.
What the hell?
879, and that's on like this is one where like
So this is a Varius game for Art.
It's Varus, and he goes like 7-7. Like that's not even like a hilarious KDA. Yeah, it's not even a hilarious KDA. But this guy just like the game went pretty long. It went like 34, 35 minutes, something like that.
They should have lost this game straight out, remember. They were miles behind with like down a Dragon Soul and an Elder Drake, and they found Elder Drake Baron buff and still found a way into the game. Like there was one fight when they were shoving on Beige, and Rascal Justice found multiple team fights that nearly got them into that game again.
Yeah, you are right there. And it should also be noted that Gango that game had a DPM of 706 himself on the Kalista.
10-3 and 7.
10-3 and 7. He kind of did that off his own back, so I think that is actually very impressive from that Kalista there, not having the backup. We saw Adia go back towards the Azir. He had a good game on that champion as well. Went towards lethal tempo, whereas Galliardo earlier in the day ended up going Hail of Blaze, trying to do a bit more early game kind of stuff. He was into the Ornn again, but then having a tank shredder, he showed what he can do in team fights. And he is a very good playmaking Azir as well. He ended up having like double shuffles into walls, which meant that they were just kind of pinned there and they just couldn't do anything. The team fighting was much more on point this game from CJ.
Yeah. I think the other thing was like with the Karma particularly, we saw it in multiple games. Like Karma would get the shove in, Set would be under tower, but Set would still be even in CS, and the plates wouldn't really go down.
No.
So what you would have effectively is you'd have priority, and that's fine, but you're not really putting the Set behind.
Yeah.
On the other hand, though, we saw the idea. Right? Karma was there to buff up Art, who had an absolutely unreal series, and that makes some sense to me.
But that was a lane that you would argue, say, Art was already doing okay to have that kind of DPM, right?
Yeah,
I think so. Remember this was
that DPM partly because of the Karma.
But you can't say it is, because like think about it. It's going to be at least
it does help. It's not all of it. It's
15 to 18, maybe 19 minutes of this 34-minute game. Art's not going to be with Cold Cog. He's going to be with Vivid in the bot lane. Over half of the game, he's going to be without Cold Cog. So
it's worth mentioning. There was a phase in this game, I believe this was the game, where they tried to dive bot lane like 5-man 2-3 times in a row. Like they all just went towards the bot lane, hung out there with teleports. They failed the initial dive, and then it's because CGA were playing Kalista Thresh, and they were against Varus Blitzcrank. So if Thresh got hooked, first he could use his aftershock, be tanky, mean that the hook didn't really mean that much, and then you had the Fates call as well. So we saw sometimes where like Chains of Corruption were being held to make sure that that he couldn't just get pulled out. But that meant that I feel like Gango and Grendel played this game 2 really well on the whole. I think this game was arguably their best laning game, and of course it shows in the stats for the Kalista as well. 10-3 and 7. That is a big KDA. Don't make any mistake about that.
I mean, there's also an element in this game as well where it was a bit of a game of pixels between the two supports, where Vivid would be missing hooks by what felt like nothing, whereas Grendel would be hitting flash hooks by what felt like nothing, and that made a lot of difference, particularly in the mid game.
True.
Yes, there was a flash hook onto Hatchmancher that was really good,
which was just amazing. Yeah, and he pulled him out of his tunnel. All of this kind of. Having said that, well played by the Jesters to come back into this game from.
Yeah, Hatchmancher played like a beast this game.
Yeah,
and like to come back into a game, it felt like they should never have been in at all at some point. Part of that's Ornn items, part of that's good team fighting, part of that Karma getting Athene's and Ardent Sensor and giving Art all the additional. There were a lot
of heals into Art, which nearly saved him in a team fight, which turned it around. It didn't end up happening that game particularly because Aria was so far ahead. Actually, there was a dragon fight where like Art goes about 200 HP, it gets buffed up to like it gets buffed up to like 600 HP with a shield on top of it. It just doesn't matter because it does damage.
It sort of got fallen down to the point of the carries for the side of Crest were Ardia and Ganga, and the carries from the side for the Jesters were Hatchimetra and Art. And which is more consistent, dealing a lot of damage? CGA's lineup of Azir and Kalista, like that's just why they were winning this. Besides the fact that they had more gold and everything else, it was just kind of a game like that. And then
that being said, I feel like Ninja's Ornn did do well in team fights, though. I feel like he did a good job.
But within that, the third game that happened, CGA take it again. Game 3,
Adia gets Silas. Adia gets Silas. Rascal Jester try and counterpick with Kassadin. It doesn't work. I think that's fair to say. This game,
this was a stomp.
It was a stomp. It was a massive snowball because effectively, Rascal Jester tried to draft. It started off with a Scuttle Scrap fight at about level 3. So Yoshi goes down on Sejuani versus Gragas, not Gragas versus Jarvan. So Jarvan can abuse that matchup somewhat if he finds this Sejuani, and he does find Sejuani doing this Scuttle at about a third HP after doing a jungle clear. Goes on to Yoshi, who then who has the Sejuani passive and Aftershock anyway, survives the initial brunt, and then Silas basically ends up coming down to the fight. The bot lanes are both joined in. He flashes, like, curves the bullet, wanted style or whatever it is, and then just, like, lands the chain kind of the knock-up thing from Silas E onto Art, gets the first kill, sets Art behind. Yoshi ends up getting kill participation as well. This is probably Yoshi's best game on the Sejuani, actually. I think this is the game where we said on cast and afterwards, it's like, you know how in game 1, everything was kind of coming up Hachimecha's way? This game, everything's coming up Yoshi. And when that happens on a Sejuani in the early game, you know you're really set up for success, because Sejuani shouldn't really survive the early game in that manner. And then just this Silas just popped off. And Ganga also picked up Kai'Sa. We've seen a little bit of a resurgence. It's going towards AP again now, so you go like Muramana, Rageblade into Nash's Tooth. You take Halo Blades for the early burst. And it follows up on all this CC super, super hard.
Yeah, and the idea was that basically you had an Aatrox, a Set, alongside a Silas and Kai'Sa diving all the way in to follow up on the Sejuani CC, and like, with the snowball already going the way of CGA, they could basically pull the trigger on anything. This was the most CGA game we'd seen from CGA, where CGA love to dive. Like basically what CGA do is they dive and they find every fight, and if everybody can press an R button and join in, then it's all gone well for CGA. This was kind of them at their best on that front. Whereas for the Jesters, they were kind of waiting on 2 items for pretty much all of their carries. I think even Karma kind of wants a couple items to be really good in a team fight. You want an Athenes and something. Whereas Kassadin went for Roa. Seraph said it was a late tier for that as well, so he's waiting for 20 plus minutes to be relevant. We're looking at Art on an Aphelios who wants 2-3 items to be really, really good. I mean, you can do things early because it's Aphelios and he's got everything in his kit apart from a dash. But like, it meant that they never got that. They were so behind the curve because CJ got a lead off that Scuttlecrab fight and then proceeded to press R on every hint of an engage. I mean, there was nothing the Jesters could do.
I think the easiest way to just think about this was a 25-minute game where CGA ended 10k gold up, basically. Like, this was just a stomp in every lane. There was no question about it.
And this is the game where I really question the Karma. I think that in game 2, I was fine with it. I could see the reasoning. It just didn't end up working out in the grand scheme of things. This game, you're playing Karma with a Kassadin and an Aphelios, and then also what was the jungler?
Move that Karma mid and try and be Syros, for fuck's sake, if you really want to force this shit.
There's actually something to say about that. There's something actually to be said about that, because effectively, Karma doesn't do well into Aatrox, which is what Nat picked up this time. So this had to be a GLP onto the Karma just for some disengage. Karma actually gets shut down super hard by Silas as well, who can just dash onto her and kill her. And she needs to wait such a long time to have an impact in the game because her carries take a while to come online. She can help them kind of bridge them to that point, but like when Aphelios was set behind early and Kassadin just doesn't come online until like.
Well, it's also the fact that Hachimecha didn't play a carry jungler.
Well, you'd normally expect that the Jarvan can affect the Sejuani, but there is something to be said about not playing a carry jungler like the Olaf as well. The Olaf was banned away this game. I think it was banned for a lot of this, series.
Well.
Okay, so there was some thoughts towards that.
Talia.
But yeah, this Karma, this was the bad Karma game. This is the one where I'm like, okay, right, this ain't working so well.
Yeah, this is the one where you could see the fixation punish.
I don't know. I feel like game 5 might also be a reason. But I think let's go on to game 4 and see where Rascal Jester showed that they still had something in the tank. They were still rattling around and they wanted to say something about this game, as they did get the W.
They did get the W, bring it up to 2-2. It's worth noting. So game 2, I talked about Art having a DPM of about 880, absolutely absurd. Game 2, almost half that. He really got shut down, went to like 440. This game, he was back to that huge damage waves with an 850 DPM game.
Man.
He was playing the Poke Varus this time, which kind of buffs up those numbers a little bit because, you know, you just have all of this ability to just kind of like, your target accessibility is huge with those arrows. And he was backed up by Karma in the support role this time. Vivid had a huge Karma game, took the exhaust. Alia picked up Echo. Gango was once again on the Kai'Sa, so there was a lot of dive, and just the exhaust just shut them down.
Yeah, and it wasn't just that. Like, so this was another one of those games where you've got double poke bot lane, and then a AP Nautilus mid from Ninja, Rek'Sai for Hachimecha, and Cog on Kennen.
Cog.
Oh, and
Like-
like this was why I was kind of almost okay with
Well-
something like originally with Cog picking up Nico because like he plays the cannon so well. Nico's kind of not dissimilar with the ultimate. That's the idea. This game was like we got double poke bot lane. What are they gonna do? Well, like surprise, surprise, we're gonna party around the bot lane, and well, what do you expect?
Yeah, they threw Gango under the bus this time because his game 3, Kai'Sa, was really, really strong. Ended up finishing 9-3 and 6. This game, they just didn't let him lane. He got poked out super early. They put the jungle attention all down there. And in team fights, when Gango and Audi are on these dive champions, and Yoshi played Jarvan, so a lot of... Oh yeah, they were all dive because they had an Aatrox, Jarvan,
Yeah, it was
Echo
hyper dive.
mid, Kai'Sa, and Set support, which Grundle actually looked very good on the game before that. Should have mentioned that. Set was picked up as support for CGA in game 3, picked it up in game 4 as well. He looked just pretty good on this, considering how many question marks we had about Grendel throughout the regular split. He looked good in lane, good in team fights, good in skirmishes. But when you dive in with all these comps into a cannon ult, everything gets nasty. Yeah, Nautilus as well with the hook and the ult, and then you have a Rek'Sai on the other side for point and click disengage with the knockup, and then you have Chains of Corruption from the Varus. All of this stuff is anti-dive, and it worked out so well for them. CJ always want to fight. They fought into a lot of tools which could deal with them, and they lost the game.
Yeah. And it was also like they hit this point where earlier on, his whole deal was, I need to get on art. That's what I need to do, and to get onto this Varus, if he's got no flash, he has no way out. Varus built Edge of Night, and that suddenly meant that a lot of the other bits of CC weren't landing on him, and so the pressure was on Yoshi to find art some way, somehow. And he just couldn't. Art managed to find a number of team fights where he was free-firing from way out of range, while Cog, and Ninja and Hatchametcha dealt with a kind of slightly disjointed engage from Grendel and Gango and Arya as they tried to find their way into team fights. And because of that, effectively the Jesters came out on top because they could never get to Art, ever.
Ninja's Nautilus was also really, really
It was really... I
there are a lot of
marked it a bunch, but...
Yeah. I love I love the just the poise that the whole Rascal Jester team had during that game. There were points where Arya was jumping in with a parallel convergence and then using the ult to come back. They weren't using the Nautilus hook to catch out the Echo on the initial engage. They'd wait for him to ult back, and then it's basically point and click at that point because you know exactly where he's going to land. And Ninja landed like 2-3 times, meaning that Arya, where normally he does kind of escape as Arya does because he's mechanically very proficient, he wasn't this game. He was getting exhausted on the dive and then diving into a cannon ult, getting hooked back into the fight. He never really managed to get a snowball, much like in game 1, and he couldn't impact team fights.
Again, another... I want to mention Hatchametcha popped off like a boss as well. Hatchametcha's Rek'Sai is very fucking scary.
It's really good. It's really, really good.
So definitely
6, 3, and 10 did a lot of work on that.
Yeah, did really good.
And then also Vivid's Karma made a lot of sense this game. It did a lot of work. A lot of work.
No, this was Rascal Jester. Like every player, it's a team comp which is more than the sum of its parts, and all the parts performed very admirably.
It's similar.
They were very. We could see where the Jesters coming from in this, because this is like the Jesters at their best are very smart. This was a fantastic adaptation to Game 3, and we saw what CJ wanted to do with their dive comp. This was the Jesters saying, okay, how do we answer this? Try this out for size CJ, and they really punished them. The gold was fairly close throughout because there was some good side laning going on, and there was double Rift Herald to Drake focus, so they managed to get tower gold. But you kind of pretty swiftly that the gold meant nothing if you couldn't leverage it.
Yeah.
And Rascal just played the mid and late game very, very well.
And with that said, it brought us to our 5th and final game of the series. It was I can't even lie. It was a weird game to end this series.
It was
28 minutes, which went in the favor of Crest Gaming Act. 6th place seed beat 4th place. Thoughts, gentlemen?
So it did go the way of CGA, but it wasn't as simple a story as that. Fireworks started exploding early with this massive bot lane play. Well, there was a couple of mid lane plays where Arya got like 3 kill participation alongside the Sejuani as well. The mid 2v2. Yoshi and Arya playing so well around the mid lane 2v2. Then there was this huge just colliding of forces in the bot lane. Archer was on the not Archer, Art, all the 8 players, was on the Aphelios this game.
Yeah.
He'd taken Conqueror, he had Chakrams and Severum. He gets 3 kills in this
By himself.
huge fight. By himself. 1v3, 3 kills.
Dead. Like, they'd start an engage, they killed Vivid off, and then Art hits Onslaught and walks at them. Like, the fight is over, and he basically finds a way back in, kills Gango, kills Grendel, naps there, and tries to get onto him, messes up the Haymaker, and Art picks him up for punishment. And this whole game was effectively between Art and Arya trying desperately to reverse carry against each other. And there were fights where it was going one way, fights where it was going the other. Oh my days.
So that being said, I think it's worth talking through the whole draft because a lot of things happened here, some of which I've been calling for a while.
Yeah.
So Crest had Set, Sejuani, Silas once again for Arya, and then Zyra Khan. Zyra Khan is something which I've wanted from Crest Gaming for such a long time now, considering that they played it so well in their tiebreaker. Gango had some good Zyra games earlier in the split as well. I think it shields Grendel. Grendel had already been playing well this series, but when he's playing something like Nautilus, he can sometimes kind of find his way into a fight and then just die for free because he can't find a way back out. Rakan obviously has that way back out with the Battle Dance, and with the Zyra it increases the range. So he ends up having this huge like note button to just disengage from a fight. On the other side, Cog picks up Karma Top again. Hatchametro is on Rek'Sai after coming off that huge game in Game 4. Ninja picks up Diana, and then there is Aphelios and Nautilus in the bot side for them as well. Unfortunately for Ninja, his Diana ult effectively just becomes a really good steal for Silas. That's kind of what it turns into this game.
Yeah, that's
But
pretty much it.
Art had a huge game. Arya had a huge game. I think Grendel and Gango also performed very admirably that game.
I also do want to say, I know MaskedSwan wasn't sure about the karma in this one, but I actually think the Fiend's heals in this one,
I think in this game,
they were massive for the Aphelios. Game 3, awful. Got dived and we got slapped across the face. This one, like, there were some heals between the Severum and the Athenes, which won Rascal Justice and Fights, and was that.
And he had Conqueror as well, right? So if it allowed him to it allowed him to survive until he got Conqueror in a fight, and then start use Conqueror, and that's why Art was so scary this game, so scary, and the game was entirely about does Art die?
Yeah. And there was one point where effectively they got the Jess got a 4-for-1. Killed absolutely everybody, got an Ocean straight after, then rotated over to Barum and were trying to force Arya to teleport in. They got the teleport. Vivid got caught. Just. And then beyond that, Ninja gets caught afterwards, and suddenly it's a 3v5. It's Art, Cog, Hatchametcha versus the world. They're trying, they get a couple kills, but it's not quite enough. And Art goes down finally to the Silas, despite being on Sentinel turrets. I think he was Chakrams and it would have been Crescendum and Calibrum was what he had as his weapons.
Yeah, which is it's good short range DPS, but it's not enough peel really.
Yeah, and if he'd had Severum for some healing, I think he could potentially have won that
Graviton,
fight.
right?
Yeah, Graviton, but it just wasn't quite right, and it was that alone in some ways got CGA a win there, where Yoshi landed the most amazing Sejuani ultimate, like out of nowhere to catch. I think it was Vivid mid-dredge line, like it was kind of insane. Just great stuff, and that was one thing that broke it and finally got.
Also worth noting that Grendel had like 3 or 4 multi-man quickness grand entrances that game, which there was one time where after those 3 kills in the bot lane, coming a bit more into the mid game, Art had a 2-level advantage on Gango, and Gango hadn't played that game badly. He was actually doing a lot of damage, ended up on like 6-1 and 7 or something overall. That one death was in those 3 kills in the early game over towards Art. And in this fight, the Zyra Khan just came up huge. The movement speed between like the Zyra W and then like managing to catch out with the grand entrance Art in the mid lane, kind of when they fought around the mid inner, like and over the wreckage of the mid lane outer turret for CGA, they managed to finally catch out Art. Really good stopwatch usage from Silas as well, just to keep himself alive. Because if Arya had gone down and maybe the kill and the triumph coming through, the kill coming through might have been able to get Art to survive through to the next couple of kills. This time, Grendel gets the better of Art, shuts him down. Gango's there as well, of course, for the extra damage to follow up. And then this is where we kind of see, okay, right, these fights are never going cleanly one way or another. And they didn't really go cleanly up until like, the last one you were talking about, Sam.
Yeah, and do we reckon, lads, this was the most exciting game of the LJL we've cast?
I think because of the context of it.
I don't know. Tiebreakers was a pretty big match, which was like that was exciting
That was a
to
roll.
watch.
That was a roll.
Yeah, but that's still fun to watch.
Oh, sure.
is.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, no,
absolutely. But this was like on the wire. Like it could have gone either way. That nice edge was getting mighty thin.
Burning Core CJ was fun in week 2. That was the one with the quadricle for Aria. But like, there's a difference between entertaining and exciting, right? I think this one's the most exciting. I completely lost my voice. I was screaming at the screen. It's game 5. No one knows who's gonna win. Huge DPM numbers again. Actually, let me just go find those. It was 880 once again from Art. Yeah, Gango had 685.
In 28 minutes, by the way.
Yeah, Aria had like
28 minutes it's insane. Like,
it was
fine
huge.
if it gets late and you've got items. That's in 28 minutes.
Also, I've been just doing some extra little stats in the background as well because I really love talking about the efficiency of players. And normally when we see really high GPM numbers, we normally see that some players end up, even when having all this gold, don't always manage to like leverage it. Like you were saying, what happens when you leverage an advantage? So for instance, Ninja, his DPM per the gold he earned was about 67. In the other series, let me check some stuff out there. Boogie had like 52 DPM per gold he earned. Aria and Gango both had like, so Gango had 74, Aria had 77, Art had 99 DPM per gold earned. That's almost unheard of, considering how much DPM he was doing. He was just through the roof, and then doing that whilst also earning the lion's share of the gold. You normally think, okay, the efficiency is going to drop. No, it just goes up for him. Absolutely huge game, but it didn't carry them in this game 5.
It wasn't good enough. And I mean, any closing thoughts quickly before we go on to our player of this series?
I am heartbroken for Rascal Jesters because they are a very intelligent, fun drafting team. They pull out random stuff in draft. Sometimes it works. Sometimes they pick Karma top. This was so fun to cast in a lot of ways. In some ways, it kind of validates us kind of picking the LGL to cast and all this other stuff. As much as we've enjoyed all the regular split as well, I was sat there thinking like, wow, give me like another 5 games of this tomorrow. I'll do it again. I've lost my voice, I won't be able to speak, but I'll do it again.
We both pretty much lost our voices doing this.
Yeah, I couldn't speak the next day. I screamed too much.
Yeah. Aria and Art were both phenomenal. You know, like let's put that. I think there's also shouts out to people like Demetra, to David, Ninjas, all and all that.
Yoshi to not getting run over as well. Actually,
that's
did
what
very
I
well.
wanted to do. Was I wanted to bring up Grendel and Yoshi, who really stepped up to both of them. Grendel barely got caught out. Played some very good game. Played some very aggressive. Like even the Nautilus in game, I want to say game 1 actually. He was the one guy who managed to get a kill onto Art, like in a 1v3, managed to get the on that.
We got like double kill. Double kill for the Nautilus.
And Yoshi in that last game, like Grendel and Yoshi in that last game, those glacial prisons, those quickness grand entrances were massive. And suddenly these guys we had so many question marks around are beginning to answer them, and I have a lot more faith in CGA than I did coming into this. Honestly, I have a lot more faith in both teams than I did coming into this. I thought this was going to be probably a little bit messy, and in some ways it was, but a lot of that mess was off really clutch playmaking than it was stupid decisions.
It was, and
that's a big difference.
You know what my real closing thought is? I predicted CGA would win back in our last podcast episode. You should go watch that as well. No one believed me.
You flip-flopped!
Okay, so then then before the series, I said, oh, okay, CJ are gonna win. Before game 5, I was like, oh crap, they're gonna bottle it. So I thought that Rascal Jester would win. Lexi predicted it was. He went with CJ at that point. I mean, my pre-game.
I was with Rascal Jester in the podcast, and then I switched over.
Yeah, so both of these guys were on the Jester's side on the podcast, and just before we cast the series as well, like in the pre-game stuff. I was with CJ up until game 5, so like my pre-game stuff still counts. I'm a good analyst, right? Whatever. But yeah, no, I couldn't imagine it getting that close, even though it was a 3-2. I couldn't imagine it being in game 5 getting that close.
Yeah. Just don't play Karma top, guys. And Nymaera, would you do us the pleasure of introducing our player of this series?
So, player of the series, one of these players has been consistent throughout the entire split, pulling out the massive big games, making all the huge plays and all this other stuff. And it's not Aria. it's not Arya. Our player of the series, after some soul searching, it's Art. Art is our player of the series. He lost. It was 3-2. It would never have been that close without him. You can put in any other AD carry in the league into those shoes, and I don't think they would have performed as he did. I think that I am gutted to lose Art in round 1. If we had to give the player of the series to a player on the winning team, and actually we did after the broadcast ended, we said, okay, first thoughts, who's our player of the series? We said Arya.
Well, these two said Arya.
It was a 2-1 vote, and I was flip-flopping. We voted again just before doing this podcast, and I flip-flopped over to Art, because I just felt like we had to recognize him. And looking at these stats again, looking at how efficient he was with all of his damage, all of his gold, you can't give it to another player. You can give it to Arya, you can, but I feel like we have to give it to him.
And like, let's not take away from Arya. He had a really good series. Like his
Huge
silence
series.
was
Huge series. It was so
monstrous.
close. Yeah.
His Azir was monstrous. Like that kind of thing is fantastic to see. But Art, I was feeling pretty good about my Jester's win condition at some points in that last game. Art, after that monstrous 1v3 outplay.
3-kill Aphelios is just horrifying.
Some of these mid lane fights, some of the fights around some of the fights around like the Baron, that Baron bait, we're thinking brilliant. They've got Jester on the rope. Oh, sorry, CJ on the rope. The most clutch at the edge of the range engages from Grendel and Yoshi saved that game there in some ways. And credit for CJ to coming together as a team when it mattered. I am heartbroken for the Jesters as a whole because they were so smart, because they played so well, because Art is, put in a Herculean effort. Like, Hercules had like 7 trials from Hera. These were 5 games from hell here as well.
Wasn't it 12 trials from Hera?
12 tries? Quite possibly. Yes, that makes much more sense.
I'm gonna save this analogy of congratulations to Crest Gaming Act, commiserations to Rascal Jesters. But that does mean we have our second match for round 2 of the LJL. Our first match is going to be a different one, but as we've got all this information about V3 and CGA, let's talk about our second match for the LJL. This is going to be V3 Esports facing off against Crest Gaming Act. And we're seeing gods collide here. We're seeing teams that are on very different streaks. V3, as I said in the cast, are on their 5, 6, 7, 8. They're on their 8-win streak now.
Yeah. I mean,
it's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so...
and CGA have been in that cannon folder. They're part of that number.
They
are.
And so CGA versus Rascal Jester, it was, very much close to that statement of, well, what's God to a non-believer as Art steps up to the plate and just tries to slug it home. Turns out a god to a non-believer is still actually a god in this case.
The Dark Lord Arya was angry at the heritage.
Yeah, so we had a load of internet issues on the day, and we're just like, obviously, because Ninja Solar killed Arya, obviously these dark cultists, which have slain our savior, that just like Arya's rage is unbridled, unbridled, unleashed, just shuts down the internet. It's just like, okay, all right. In this game, it is, as Lexi was saying, a huge clash of regular season into playoff round 1 performers. Boogie versus Arya, it's jungle versus mid lane. Both of them play Echo, so we might see a lot of that. It's going to be huge. V3 coming in with a 3-0, CJ coming with a 3-2 might make you think that this would be like very one-sided to V3. V3 could have chosen to play CJ in round 1. They chose Axes and they 3-0'd. Does that mean that they don't like their matchup as much versus CGA? That's something to think about. Probably, yeah. So maybe CGA frighten them a little. I don't know.
I phrased kind of this particular series in the lower bracket that we're talking about here as these kind of heroes desperately trying to scale Mount Olympus to go and slay the gods of DFM who look pretty imperious in the LJL. But I think these guys of V3 Esports of CGA, even Jesters, look like they were arming themselves with this Lance of Longinus a little bit, because these guys are potentially some Godslayers, because they are looking pretty good, or at least competitive, right? We thought V3 Esports were going to run over the second round robin after that first game. good. We thought CGA versus Rascal Jesters would be a little bit of a fiesta. And in some ways, it kind of was, but how much, I'm not sure how much of that fiesta was just of both teams being quite good playmakers and good players, finding ways, because they are quite evenly matched, it became down to the wire and outplays.
So,
and there is some truth to that. But I think this matchup is going to be really close.
So I want to rip the band-aid off immediately for both of you. Who's your winner? Score.
Shit.
V3, and I'll tell you why.
No. I just want to know the score and your winner before we have any more discussion.
3-1 V3 Esports.
Okay. Nymaera.
3-2 CGA.
Okay, I'm going 3-0 V3.
Whew, okay.
I'm going 3-0 V3. I think V3 are on a tear, personally. Okay, so Initia1ise, you have your reason. You may take the floor.
I will tell you why. I
Tell
think Boogie
me
is...
why.
Ain't nothing
No, we're not
okay.
doing this. God damn it.
Alright, that was a mistake. That's what that was.
Before we know it, we're going to be doing what the LEC guys did, where they had to do their coming back for...
What
with the car advert, the Kia car advert. We're going to be doing that at some point.
Okay. Yeah. So I think Boogie is still very good, and I think Hachimecha was good, but I think Hachimecha as well. I've kind of said my read on him that he's very, very good when he's got information. Boogie doesn't need that. He finds a way to battle ward if he has to, and do disgusting things. And I think Yoshi could end up having a few more of his game 1. Step point 2, though, is I think Paz has come online at a point that will terrify CGA, because I think Nap is good, but I also think in some ways he had a little bit of a
Is this playoffs from last season, Paz, good?
And
Have we hit that Paz? Because if it is that Paz,
is...
only Ebby's scary, right?
And that's kind of my point. I think Paz has hit that. He has looked very, very good. He put Uinyan in the dirt.
Isn't this a repeat?
It is. Yeah. So the semi-finals of last split, CGA versus V3, and V3 won 3-2. Completely different roster, but Paz and Ace were on on V3, and Nap was on CGA alongside Aria, who was then Luna. Yeah. The top lane was actually the really interesting one as well, because like some games Paz was rolling over them.
Nap versus Paz.
Nap versus Paz, but then also Nap like ended up pulling out Shen later in the series that time and being like a really different kind of top laner, and with Camille being less of a pick now, and Renekton not having Spirit Shojin and stuff, I don't think Paz can run over the lane in the same way. But he is still. Set and Aatrox are going to be the 2 big picks for him. Set and Aatrox. And Ornn, but I think Ornn tends to be banned. That's the thing. Whereas Set and Aatrox, and it's also a flex pick and shit. Like I feel like Set and Aatrox are the 2 big ones.
I mean, Renekton's there. I mean, for God's sake, Nat for some reason is still playing not Cogmore, Cho'Gath.
Yeah, he played a little bit.
I also want to say, like, I think Ace, we had some questions about his effective champion pool. After that series, the fact that he had the Rumble, which looked good, the Syndra, which looks excellent, adding on to his LeBlanc and his Nocturne, I think he will be harder to...
And that Echo's now a flex.
It is, it definitely is.
As is the Nocturne, right? The fact that they do have some picks in the mid lane, which give Ace some... comfort and like power, even if he is up against Arya, makes a big deal.
I want to be a bit rude here. Sorry, Nymaera, but I'm going to use a point that you brought up for your personal tier lists.
Okay.
I want to use this against you. Okay.
No, it's fine.
So, Hoglet was your second place jungler, right?
Yes.
Where was Yoshi?
He was pretty far down.
Wasn't he 6th?
He might have been 6 out of the 6 playoff teams.
Okay, so Boogie versus Hoglet was
that was
pretty bad.
Brutal, that was like serious dad to son moment. Like, so son, what did you do?
So Boogie
I might have read him 6
versus Yoshi. Your thoughts on this matchup, seeing as we saw Hoglet?
Yeah, okay. So bring it back a little bit out of the drama. I think Yoshi
stepped up,
had a good series. He was not infallible. He had some duff engages on one of the Jarvan games. I believe that was the...
Oh, that was awkward.
That was pretty bad. That being said...
That was game
Game 4, where it was like when he was desperately trying
Yeah,
to
that
get
was game
onto
4 when
art.
Hachimacha had to
Yes,
hard
I know.
carry with
It
us.
was hard. It was hard. Don't get me
With
wrong,
Kokok,
but like,
to be honest.
but yeah, it was just trying to
Kokok's
find
Kennen
someone.
really.
Kokok played Kennen and they won. It's like, stop playing fucking Karma, dude. Just
Yeah,
get.
I mean, I understand because it's supposed to buff up Art, who played a really good series, so I get it.
Play Kennen.
Did it work out? No. I understand the reasoning.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think the thing is though, Axe has played with nerves, and CGA have pretty much never played with nerves. They just
But are V3 gonna
like
play
that.
with nerves?
No, and that's why I think this could be our most entertaining series because of that. Because we're gonna see fireworks everywhere.
But like, we still in
so
game 3.
I also
Go on.
I just want to go on to a little thing. So obviously we're talking about Yoshi versus Boogie, which was like a first versus sixth. There was another first versus sixth matchup actually in my rankings though, which is Arya versus Ace. Ace I did not rate coming to playoffs. He had a good series. Actually, interesting thing to note out here is actually that his his DPM per minute, even on very high damage champions like Rumble, Syndra, all the other stuff, was lower than Gadiadu's that series. Gadiadu actually had a pretty good series from the side of Axes, even though the Syndra had the huge KDA and all this other stuff. Arya once again was higher than was higher than him and all this stuff. So then we talked about him almost being the player of the series. I think that if Ace doesn't match his round 1 performance, and even if he does, Arya could run away with this as well. The mid 2v2 is going to be huge.
Where's Ninja in your power rankings out of interest?
Ninja was pretty low on the whole. And
that was my counterpoint.
A very good series.
Was it Ninja? I'm doing off the top of my head.
I think
4th. I think he's 4th on your list.
Wait, who?
I had him.
You had him 5th, right?
I think I had like
back over it.
I love using this as a counterpoint. You're like this, and I'm like, but objection.
Yeah, it was 4th. It was 4th because I put Saros down in like
so
5th.
fucking good at remembering useless information.
I've got no idea.
So the reason I had him down there is because Ninja is relatively inconsistent. This time he pulled out the clutch, and actually that is kind of how Ninja is in some ways. He's a very clutch player. His Diana was not good.
That's the one game.
His Cassidin was garbage.
His Cassidin.
That's the pick though. That game really like.
Yeah.
Agreed. I very much agree. But I still want to just criticize it.
Yeah. So like with one game was the pick, one game was the play. There were 3 games where he was great, and that's kind of how Ninja is. He has got this big game clutch mentality. Arya doesn't. He's just clutch all the time, pretty much.
Except for game 3. Oh no, not game 3. Game 4. No.
Game 4 on the Echo was kind of meh. Game 1 on the Akali was kind of meh.
Oh, the Akali. Yeah, game 1. Yeah.
Yeah, the Akali was mad.
It was close again. You can see where he was going with a lot of the plays.
Yeah.
Yes, I know it's your church.
But I think for V3, I think there is that issue. I think Ace has stepped up, which is good. So has Yoshi, which is good. And I think that makes this series a lot closer than it would have been. I still don't think Gango and Grendel are going to find their way through Archer and Reyna, who've been looking pretty phenomenal.
That's a little worrying.
Reyna has been very good. I think Boogie is a different style of jungler to Hatch and Mecha, and I think... Because Boogie... Also, like, V3 are a different style of team.
Yeah,
Jess has played anti-dive.
So
V3 is full dive, and I think they'll pull the trigger fast.
So Initialize. I want to hear Nymaera's thoughts on why he thinks how CGA are going to win this. Because we're of the opinion, and we're just screaming from high heavens, it's cool, CGA might give a fight, but we're going to win. All right, Nymaera, go on. Explain how CGA are going to win this one.
Each game is going to be rolling a dice and hope that it comes up with draft Xayah Rakan. That's pretty much it. I think that Xayah is such a power pick in this series. We've seen Archer and Reyna look really good playing around Xayah lanes, and Gango, and particularly Grendel looks better on the Rakan for the aforementioned reasons I said back in Game 5 stuff. Arya has a lot of champions to go through. I think that if he goes towards Vladimir, I think he will just... his Vladimir and Silas, I believe, are maybe the 2 best team fighting mid lane picks we've seen in the LJL all split. They have just been absurd. Just absurd.
Do you think
I will also
that
say, remember that V3 will have side selection because they're the highest.
They will do. Yeah, that might change things a little bit. I think that either way, on blue side, you are more likely to pick like 2nd and 3rd pick Xayah Rakan for CGA, which I really want them to do. Or you can do that as 4-5. I think that's fine for them. They did that in Game 5, remember, as well, which was Rascal Jester's side pick, and they came out win with that. Whereas on red side, they get themselves counter pick for one of the side lanes, or well, not side lanes, one of a mid or top lane.
So I think the more important part is, are V3 going to have to do the exact same as Rascal Jester and every single match ban Zoe and LeBlanc?
No, because Ace plays LeBlanc.
Ace plays a really mean LeBlanc, but unless you're going to first pick it, you have to ban it.
Quite possible. They will. They can.
Okay, so that means they open up a slot in their arsenal, meaning they could, in first round, ban Xayah.
They could ban those things, and then stuff gets a little bit more
Or pick
weird.
it themselves.
But then
They could pick it themselves, but surely you
then
want to try and
actually-
completely minimize it from that side.
So we're going to talk about this a little bit later in terms of meta stuff.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like Gango's been picking up some different AD carries and looking good on them. The Kai'Sa in game 3 was huge.
Kalista
I
as
think
well.
if it weren't for just the massive CC, I think they kind of draft themselves into a bit of a hole there. But
Somewhat,
Gango's
yeah.
Kai'Sa is good. I think that his Kalista, I wasn't a believer the first time we saw it. That was against V3 in their first game, I believe, in the regular split, where Archer played the Xayah.
But that was a different Kalista as well.
It was very different in a lot of ways. You're right. But
I know your point. I understand.
But the point is, effectively, I think that Gango is starting to open up different stylistic AD carries, which mean that they have options in the draft again, which is it is very important. So, to be honest, in a week when we come to this stuff, well, whenever we come to this stuff, there's a good chance I change my mind because CJ are so inconsistent in a lot of ways. If Grendel performs like he did, I think they're in with a good shot. I think that basically Grendel and Yoshi need to match their set 1 performances. I think that Nap against Paz is going to be, every lane is going to be just huge if the performances are met from round 1. I am a little bit worried about Grendel versus Vivid. Vivid looked really good on the Karma.
Yeah, he did.
I'm a little bit worried about Gango versus Archer. Archer looked really good in round 1 as well. I think that Archer and Reyna might look a little bit better because they were against Axe's bot lane, which laning is not their speciality. Team fights are more that kind of thing, and skirmishes.
Sure.
And then they obviously kind of ran over lane. There are a lot of shared picks between these teams, which is also going to make drafts just really weird. We've got like Echo, Thresh, I think is going to be another big pick as well. Grendel's look really good on that. And then of course like some of the mid lane champions. I think Ace did play a bit of Sylas, but not nearly as good as
but Ardia's been the premier mid lane Sylas really for the
He has been.
LJL.
It's been banned away from him so much.
I want
Do you
to just.
think Boogie picked it up?
I think wasn't it banned away from him? It was banned away from him. I think.
I want to kind of take this more in the direction of any closing thoughts, so we can go on to our other round 2 match.
I have given it 3-1 to V3 Esports. I would not be surprised to see CGA come up with a win, but I still give V3 the advantage, basically because I still think Boogie is fairly significantly better than Yoshi.
So good. No, he is so good.
And I think Paz is really online at the minute.
I think Nap's been good too, though. That's my thing.
Yeah, but like I also think Nap's been good at soaking pressure in a way that I think Paz at the minute has. I just think V3 Esports are pulling the trigger so decisively and very, very well that I think what CGA want to do, V3 almost do better with the dive. And that's what worries me, because I think if they then get behind, they could get snowballed on real fast.
My closing thoughts, as I will close it and then bring it into our next match, is I think V3 are in just such a dominant, scary position. I want to see them lose a game, because I've not seen a fault really come out from them. Even in their game against Axis, where Axis were winning for a period of that game, it never looked like Axis were actually winning, and there's a game theory way around this that I have an opinion of, is where the deception of actual power within a game, and that's the idea of, oh, I'm winning this game, and you feel like you're winning, or like you're in a winning situation, but you actually feel like you're behind. And this is very common in strategy games, and a game like a MOBA, where so many things are quantifiable and so much data is unaware, and there are outside information.
Gold lead, items, experience.
Just, yes, so
Vision,
much. Turret plates, for fuck's sake, and actually tracking everything. Like, it's so hard to track everything and know exactly where you are. I'm of the opinion that V3 just don't give a fuck half the time about it, and they just know that they're ahead, or just assume they're ahead because they play with such courage. It's going to be interesting to see them against CGA, because CGA are going to, no offense, Access.
They're arguably similar versions of themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're just as aggressive, right? They will meet them on the aggression front.
This is going to be so hard to cast. I'm never going to be able to talk. They're just going to be fighting all the time.
Yep.
But with a matchup that might be a little bit different in the grand scale of things, we're going to also see our first and second seed. That being Detonation Focus Me facing off against Sengoku Gaming. Both these teams are guaranteed at minimum 3rd place, remember, as this is how it works out. The winner will go into the finals of this match, and the loser will go into the round 3, which will be played on the 25th of April. That's a full month, so these teams are going to get a lot of time to prep for it. You can see already Sengoku are already starting to do that prep work. It's going to be interesting.
Mm.
Obviously, like I did before I get either of you rather, to give your thoughts on this, ripping the band-aid, who's winning this and the score. Nothing else, just that.
DFM win 3-1.
DFM win 3-0.
DFM win 3-1. Okay, so we're all of the opinion that DFM win with some dominance. This is a Sengoku, though, remember. This is the team who actually legit won a game against DFM. None of this funny business like V3, where, well, in my opinion, funny business. I know you guys have your own opinion. If you want to listen to that, episode 6 of our podcast, we get very in detail. I get very passionate about this. We all get very passionate about it. It's very good.
Don't put Sarah Sangalio, but yeah.
Oh, God, I don't want to discuss that conversation again. That was... But...
Still a block match. It was tough.
Don't play Nautilus and certain as a carry. Just anyway, besides the point. DFM win. Why do we think this, gentlemen?
Okay, so back when we last made our prediction about this, because when we were talking about the playoffs as a whole, I said that DFM would win 3-0. I'm starting to come around a little bit to the fact that Sengoku are probably going to have one game where they outdraft, or they have really good dragon spawns and manage to win through it in Soul. Because like that's effectively when they beat DFM. They rolled an Infernal Soul with an Ezreal who was just so far ahead of the curve. Had some really good dive as well. And I didn't get to cast that game, so I had to kind of watch it back. But DFM just got out-win conditioned. And that is not something we see often, actually.
No.
Well, we've seen it 2 other times. The difference is in those 2 other times, Ebby was able to win the game for them with a TP into the base.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. They managed to problem solve, but they couldn't problem solve against Sengoku because they never had they never broke the base to make that kind of play.
Absolutely.
And so I didn't get to cast this, obviously, like I said, which is kind of sad, but I think that Sengoku, arguably for me, are maybe a better version of Axis in the way that they think about the game in terms of grabbing onto win conditions and just saying like, okay, we are at this point of the game with this many dragons, this items, these champions, what do we do to win the game? And they have a good way of kind of navigating their way over to the end game. Not to say that Axis are bad at that. I think that in the regular season there was I was really looking forward to the Axis Sengoku match. It ended up going Sengoku's way. But like, there's a lot of similarities between the 2 teams and how they think about the game. Sengoku also have some pretty good laning mechanics as well. Yutori Miyashi was our our MVP for the AD carry role, and rightfully so. I think he had a very dominant end to the split, and his early split was also very consistent. And and then Pyrion's been stepping up in the last couple of weeks alongside Blank as well.
So go ahead.
Sorry, go
on.
No, you go. I was going to go.
Okay, so I want to go somewhere else as well.
Okay.
I want to ask: Is Week 5 Sengoku DFM game a blueprint of what we're expecting from this series? Is it going to be not a lot of kills? Is it going to be a very tight game played around win cons, individual players, and also that? Or is it going to be more of a blueprint of Week 3, where DFM stomped Sengoku in a very methodical way? This wasn't a game where it was lots of kills. It was only 12-5, which frankly we've seen basically done in like the first 20 minutes against V3 and CGA versus Rascal Jesters, and it's been a very different game. But Sengoku, when they face against DFM, or DFM in general when they face against Sengoku, it's very methodical. There's not a lot of kills. Its edges being pushed further. It's this whole information thing and kind of thing I was talking about earlier, as I said in this series. What are your thoughts on these, gentlemen?
Okay.
Well, I like to think of this like just to give an analogy. I like to think of this as like, see, I need to make this
His
now.
eyes
before
went
it comes
so
out, right?
CGA
CGA versus V3 is the battle at the Black Gates, drawing the Eye of Sauron away from the actual important stuff happening, which is the more methodical win condition of let's get the ring to Mordor, chuck it in the fires of Mount Doom. I'm sorry, Sam. I just had to. Yep.
His eyes went so big.
So I don't think it will. I don't think Sengoku are gonna have that much of a chance, and I'll tell you why. There's 2 main reasons. One, I don't think Pyrion is going to be able to punish Seros' champion pool in any reliable way. I think when he's not been on LeBlanc, he's defaulted to Orianna, and Seros is more than happy to play into that every day of the week. And also, Nico's back in meta, and Seros plays damn mean. Which is pretty damn scary. That's another pick in his pool, which just makes DFM really scary. Make it 3 reasons. I think Ebby will make Apperman look a bit silly. Basically because Apperman is ride or die, and we've seen what happens when he dies versus Cog.
He dies multiple times.
He gets slapped. When he rides, it's fantastic, but I think Ebby is... we've been talking about the gods on Olympus that are DFM. Ebby feels like he's the king of the gods. He's really, really good. Last season...
I think Lexi and his power...
yeah, he was my number one.
Ebby is number one. Which is a very reasonable thing to do. This guy has just been untouchable this split. Even in the games where he's arguably lost, like, he's the guy who's been the win condition for his team, right? He's solo won his team games in drafts, which it shouldn't allow for that. I think that might be a problem internationally, because you can't always rely on some top laners being weaker laner.
You can't. No, you have to assume.
The shy, hooray!
Yeah. So I think that if you use that as a crutch and you don't prepare for other stuff, it gets a bit awkward. But in this game, obviously Apperman is not the shy. He ended up getting solo killed as Nar versus Kennen quite a lot in their game versus Rascal Chester when they got absolutely stomped on. But I think it will be a very interesting top lane. Apperman has been the guy to pull out some weird top lane picks. I think you are right there.
Last thing.
You
for
played
DFM
Soroka versus Ebby.
Yeah. So here's the last thing that I think will give DFM, and it comes from the coaching position, and it is on air, who I think will as some context of this guy. This is the guy who was Meg Frost and Blazers coach. He was a Zubu Frost and Blazers coach. He was CJ's coach. He was the Freak of Freaks coach between 2015 and 2016, when the reason they were good. Well, the reason they were good was because they drafted so damn well. And the reason they were drafted so damn well was because on air was that he was Rox Tigers coach for a bit. He was Hammer Life's coach for a bit. You know, this guy has been around some of the best and brightest.
Wait, can I just say about CJ, like between 2015 and 16, they also had Coco and Shy. Like, not the Shy, like the original Shy.
Yeah.
Like, they were really good too.
Yeah, exactly. And like this guy, you know, this was the 2015, he was in that CJ just when they were in that one series versus SKT, which is one of the best series of all times, that 5-game series with Bangs Lucian, which was just kind of insane.
No. If you go back and watch that, the first 2 games are actually pretty trash. The games 3, 4, 5
are fantastic. Yeah. But I think versus Sengoku Gaming, and with time to prepare, and how DFM have improved with their macro sense over the course of the split, and now they're kind of not experimenting and they're kind of into playoffs, I think we're about to see DFM hit that kind of playoff dominance level we haven't seen them.
So you're not expecting this to be methodical like the previous few games?
Oh, I think it's going to be a methodical stomp, is what it's going to be. I think they are going to absolutely crush Sengoku.
What's the average time do you think the game's going to end then? 30, 35 minutes?
Late 20s, because they won't rush it.
Sure.
Well, the thing is, though, actually, if you look at the Rascal Jester CJ game, it was like 36 minutes, 35 minutes, 25, 28, 28. Like, they were some varied things over there, too.
But DFM rarely have fast games. Even when they
have the fastest game of the split.
But that's a rare thing in and of themselves. When they have stomps, so say that week, right, where they, week 3, when they beat both the Hawks and Sengoku, top 4 teams at the time for us. They beat the Hawks in 33 minutes, 17-6. They beat Sengoku 12-5, almost 40 minutes. They don't do fast games, even when you look at a gold lead, it's like 10k in both of them. They don't win them super quick. They win them 100%. They just don't close it out as fast as possible. They do seem to play a little bit around Barons, in my eyes. They kind of always want to make sure
that's an LJL thing. The LJL just loves playing around these big objectives.
Does make me in solo queue think, I have to get Baron to win. It's like, my team's like, let's just go and end. I'm like, nah, we need the Baron, guys. We need the Baron. That's what the pros do.
I think, though, the DFM, when they are ahead in a game, they rarely lose control of it. Not in the same snowbally Fiesta way that V3 does. It is more methodical, like you're saying.
Yeah, and it's not like the Hawks first few weeks of the Hawks.
Yeah, I think one of the big reasons this is not going to go the way of Sengoku, at least in this time, I think if Sengoku drop down, beat whoever comes up to them, go back to the finals, maybe they'll have a better shot. I think for the second round, maybe they'll do something there. The reason I don't think it's going to work out this time is that Yutori Miyashi normally just kind of out-consistency, out-skills his opponent, right? He was so good. He's against Youthpom. Youthpom was second, a close second, I guess. It was like, it's not out of the realm of possibility to say that.
He's probably been the most consistent AD carries. I mean, Art's been a firework, but he's also died a little bit more, and he's like Art is consistently throwing. Like,
I actually really rated Archer really high, so.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, like, Art is one of those guys who throws his goes balls to the wall, flashes in, tries to win you the game. These
Yeah.
guys are significantly more consistent.
And while I think that NT has really stepped up in the last couple of weeks, I think that his Morgana has been really, really good. Gang was, I think, all of our first support. He was in the. He made it into my top. I think did he make it into all
Play
of our top
Senna
10s?
now as well.
He
plays
was in all of
Senna.
our top 10s, yeah.
All of our top 10 in terms of player.
And he was, I believe, first for all of us as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the gap between first and second in support is large.
Huge.
Gang
is
pretty
really,
large.
really, really good.
I think that Gang is not.
Well, I mean,
necessarily the
remember,
best.
our third place, I think, for most of us was Corporal, and he's out now.
I think I had Reyna. I had Reyna, actually.
Sure,
I don't
but
remember.
like
Yeah.
this is the kind of level. But we
I
all
had
go,
Reyna second.
Gang is first. Everybody else.
Then, yeah, I agree. And then I think. Oh no, Reyna was.
I had Reyna second.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, and Corporal was. I think I did that as well. Thinking about. Yeah, I just.
I think we all did that actually. I think we had a very similar top 3.
I think that in terms of the 2v2, I don't think DFM are going to be getting loads of 2v2 kills. That's not normally how they do things. They're skirmishing and engaging and just how they play around the map, really good. Although in the last week, Utapon did kind of walk up and die a couple of times when Gang had left lane, and that was a little bit awkward.
Suspect.
Was it the last week? It was the week before.
Oh, a week before that when they lost.
There was one death versus V3. It was in it wasn't the last week. It was the.
Remember, this is. I mean, they've also
it was first time versus V3 particularly was one. Anyway, continue.
I mean, a big concern for me over for the side of Sengoku is NT is very hot and cold as a support. Yep. He's incredibly similar in a weird way to Grendel in my eyes.
I absolutely agree. I was about to say that.
Okay, actually. So that's a big problem point for me because we know that Steel will happily find a support who's trying to do some deep wards and will just get destroyed. And when this is DFM, if Steel has an idea that's where you could be, the whole team have an idea because they communicate effectively and they always play around the map well for each other. So I'm like, what are you gonna do?
I also think NT's best champions are his mage supports. Rumble, his Morgana, that kind of deal. I mean, he can play things like a Rakan, Thresh, all the rest of it, like most supports can.
Does this show up?
No, not really. Get it closer. I've got pink. Closer.
Closer.
Wait. Oh. Pick Zaya Rakan. Right,
secret strats.
Pick
Zaya Rakan.
There we go.
That's it.
That's it.
Pink posted now.
Legit,
now
I'm just
becomes
like
a secret strat.
NT, Grendel, these guys, like, something they need playmakers a lot of the time because actually they are good playmakers, but they need them with, like, the caveat of, well, you don't die while playmaking.
Yeah.
Grendel has his Thresh as well, I think is really good. NT has his Morgana. I think that if Zyra Khan comes out in this series, I think that Yutori will be able to play around peeling for himself while NT goes off and does the team fight engaging.
I think it's Aphelios. I think Aphelios is the power pick between these two.
So I think we all put Yutori Muashi as our number 1 bot laner or AD carry as it would be, right? Is this game kind of all on his back for the side of Sengoku?
The difference between him and Utapon isn't as large as the difference between NT and Gang for me. And it's also not as large as the difference between Afferman and Evi for me as well. That's going to be pretty big. I think Tyrion in the last couple of weeks has done well. I think after watching the Axis series and seeing Gadiadu not have the impact that he had when off of the LeBlanc and stuff, I am worried for Tyrion. That being said, Gadiadu still had a good series as well in terms of some of his GPM numbers and all the other, but DPM numbers rather. Blank versus Steel is going to be pretty huge. We haven't touched on that yet. I have been of the opinion that Seros and Steel are coming into this playoffs rather cold. I don't think they've had the best end to the split in my view. We've had some arguments, discussions about that as a group. I think that Blank has had a very good end to the split. So I think that they could win through mid jungle 2v2 if the draft goes well. I don't know what Pyrion's going to go back to. I think if he's going to pick Orianna, I'd love him to pick Victor instead. I think Victor is so much more reliable, ends up having 1v1 pressure as well, and much more better.
Side lane's better.
Sideline's better, and with phase rush and all the other stuff, you just end up being pretty good. Yeah, and Blank and Steel share pretty much all the same champions. They're not going to pick up too much weird stuff, I don't think. But
I think the other thing is we've known Blank pretty much as long as his career as exceptionally streaky. When he is on, he's the Blank Knight. He has Lee Sin games that make you question what you can do on the champion. When he's off, he's really poor. Really poor. At the minute, he's on a hot streak. They've got to hope he's still on it. And Blank, when he has a read on the opposing jungler, when he gets to kind of, when he's got an eye about where Steel is going, I think that's kind of partly how Sengoku won that really good game versus them, was they called out DFM's level 1, they called out Steel's early pathing, and Blank slapped him with an amazing Elise game where he basically got 4 kills in the early game, put the bot lane in the dumpster. And if Blank can do that, I see a way in which they can get some wins. I just don't think he's going to be able to do it that consistently. And I think the other thing is DFM aren't that predictable in some ways. I think they can play through
except for Heimerdinger.
Well, yeah, but my point being is that like they can play through any lane, which makes it quite harder to track Steel, because you can't say, well, I guess he'll be going top lane because he's the only guy that they can play through.
Yeah,
and that can make Blank's life a lot harder to call out where Steel's going to be. And I don't think DFM will have that just dumb early game plays.
That being said, Blank can play to both. Well, to all parts of the map as well. So I mean, I think it's going to be the same one way or the other. I need to see what Korean picks up as his champion pool, because otherwise, like, if he's not picked up any new champions which are like effective, it's going to be pretty bad.
And if you're interested in hearing these matches, we will be casting all of these games on the day that they should be live. That's going to be the 28th and the 29th. 28th for DFM versus Sengoku, and the 29th for V3 facing off against CGA. We will be tweeting out, and obviously on our Discord. We're unable to do these ones live due to personal reasons and time zone differences, though we are doing everything within our power
do them early.
To do them as early as possible, as well as I believe we've soft locked all of us in for round 3, and the finals are going to be done live. So we're going to be very tired. 3 Englishmen, but potentially we won't have left our houses for a month, so it's not like we would have done much. Really.
So for those of us who like keep up with this, you're gonna slowly start seeing our hair grow out. You've already seen mine over the course of the
Mine's getting a little bit dumb. I think so. What's gonna happen is post the games on the week, I'm gonna take the risk and do the self haircut. That way, I've got a month or so before I have to be back on camera properly.
He's only got the podcast. So that's it.
So any mistake is only going to be like to the podcast. So this is a reason to go and watch the podcast to see how bad the haircut is going to be.
Oh God, I'm looking forward to it. But yes, we will be.
It could be bad. It could be real bad.
We'll be casting all of these games, somewhat with some delay, obviously, as all of you are well aware, because being in England is arguably the worst place in the world to be trying to do anything at the same time as Japan. We are the furthest behind outside of, I think, Greenland.
That's pretty good.
New York's technically closer because you just go the other way around.
Go around the other end, so you just cast the day behind and
we are literally like basically outside of Greenland, I think, the worst place in the world to try and be doing this. And yet obviously we love it and we do it.
Yay.
So we will be up at 4 in the morning on the 25th and the 26th.
Games.
Oh yeah. But
in the midday, not the midday sun, the midnight sun.
So, round up for our listeners. We are expecting. Oh, okay, so myself and Initia1ise are expecting V3 to beat CGA. I believe Initia1ise is 3-1, and I am 3-0. And Nymaera, all on his lonesome, is expecting CGA to beat V3 3-2. So a competitive series.
We'll see.
In our other round match, we are all expecting DFM to beat Sengoku. 2 of us are 3-0. No, 1 of us is 3-0 and 2 of us is 3-1. So we're expecting that to be somewhat far more one-sided. With that all said, let's start bringing this podcast to its end, and let's go on to Meta Talk. So
can we try that all again? Can we harmonise that?
Okay, this is going to be difficult to time it because I remember I'm a bit ahead of you also.
Meta Talks. I'll take that.
The thing is, we're gonna have to listen back to it to see if we're all actually in harmony.
That was all right. I think it sounded right in my headphones.
Okay.
We'll take it.
So looking at these
a little flat to begin with. I fixed
looking at this notes, we got some carries and stuff. Who wants to start us on this one? We got Varus.
I can do that.
Varus. Varus, what the fuck, Varus?
So patch 10.5 is playoffs. 10.6 is coming. we have seen Aphelios and Senna hit 2 patches in a row now. I think they're hit again on 10.6 actually, so they've been hit a lot. And they were really the dominant AD carries. And Misfortune has slowly started losing a bit of priority. Not up to the same levels that we were.
She's just
She's
not
still good.
S
She's
tier.
still in the meta pool. She doesn't tend to abuse lane in terms of the all-ins as much as Senna and Aphelios do, which means that she doesn't tend to hold back other carries as much as the 2 which I just mentioned. What this means is that Varus is back because he has, for 2 very important reasons, 2 builds. He can either go poke or he can go on hit, and he can be flexed between 2 roles as well. Either of them very lane dominant and has playmaking potential. This guy has everything and used to suffer a little bit under the hands of Aphelios and Senna. Doesn't have to deal with that anymore.
No, really.
And then the other lane dominant carry coming back is Callista.
Callista! She's great.
Has a flex between top and AD carry. Very lane dominant again, can go Halo Blades or Lethal Tempo, depending on the early game or the late game that you want. And she gets to save her her support. Very useful for Grendel, we've mentioned this before. And then the last AD carry is Kai'Sa. She had some changes, which means that her AP on her ratio on her Q is up, and also although no, I think it might be down. Okay, anyway, her Q got changed, and then her W got increased on her AP build. So she's coming back with like the Muramana into Rageblade into full AP after an Ashes
that like
kind of
split build, right?
And a kind of hybrid build, but then you kind of like
you still build Trinity, right? Or do you not do?
You don't build Trinity. So you go Muramana, you go into Rageblade, you go into Nash's Tooth, then it's full AP after that. So it's kind of like early game
it's like
AD
attack speed AP.
Exactly, yeah. It's on hit, but then also like the AP with all the other stuff. Because AP scales on her passive, scales on her Q, scales on the W. The Muramana means that your upgraded Q, which you get from 2 items anyway, is an absolute nuke. You go Halo Blades, which means you proc your first passive really easily, which means that if you get onto an AD carry, they die. We saw that pulled out twice from Gango. I reckon we're going to see it throughout the playoffs as well. We know that Utapon plays a mean Kai'Sa. We saw it in the finals actually last split. And
solo kills.
So, yeah.
And it's also like Kai'Sa matches up really well with a lot of the current support pools.
And she also works well into MF.
Yeah, Nautilus in particular stacks that plasma so damn fast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The Kai'Sa gets. Yeah, I mean, like, and basically the fact that you've got a lot of. We're seeing a lot more dive comps from teams come through. V3 did a lot of it. CJ did a lot of it. Yeah. Kai'Sa loves that. So, presses an R button on these guys and makes people.
So why are we seeing so many of these AD carries? So we can still play Aphelios. We can still play Senna. Obviously, Nymaera is in love with Xayah Rakan, so Xayah is still good.
I think Xayah's
And then
really
we've got Varus, Callista, Kai'Sa. That's 6 AD carries.
Yeah. And did we mention Misfortune?
And Misfortune's still S tier, so that's 7 in total.
And Ezreal, I think.
Ezreal, yeah, 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually this is much bigger AD carry pool than we've seen.
We've gone from 2 with a flex 1 when one of them gets banned. You have to play Misfortune. Yeah. It's either Senna, Aphelios, or MF, who's a 3rd place, very much a 3rd place. And now we've gone to 7 in the space of a few weeks.
So let me ask this question: who do you guys think that this benefits the most out of the LJL teams in playoffs?
Utapon.
Yutori Muashi. Tenya. I'm sorry, I look at Tenya and...
Utapon's up there with him.
Yeah, I know.
For me, there are 2 factors to this. Who was better at the AD carries that were very dominant? Who's going to be better and draft better around these carries which are now in meta? Obviously, Rascal Jester had like this like flex of the mid lane Varus as well. Do we think anyone else plays mid lane Varus? Has anyone else shown that? Who do you think is going to be affected by that?
I think it's not that far out of Seros's wheel.
I think Seros will be fine with it, yeah.
I also want to say that, particularly with the Callista, it's 2 very different plays. Bot lane Callista is a very different beast to solo lane Callista. I think we've probably heard enough from other people, but like to people who haven't heard how it works, effectively you don't put any points in your W, you scale your Q and your E, you go Blade of the Rune King, Sanguine Blade in either order actually you've seen. You use your Black Dagger, I can't remember what it's called. Black Spear, thank you. To bond with your jungler, who's probably going to be a Rek'Sai or a Gragas, and throw them in, which is pretty disgusting as well. And you absolutely wail on people who pick set blind, is the idea.
Which is a lot of the playoff teams.
I'm gonna I'm gonna go with career stats. We're gonna do the old PGA kind of over here on the career stats. For anyone else that watches golf, it's a fun sport to watch. I swear.
It's not bad in the background. Our grandparents love golf.
It's the best background. Yeah. Arguably, it's the best background sport in the world.
Yeah.
But I'm biased because I also used to play a lot of golf. Yes, I'm
I
incredibly
think
middle
tennis
class
is pretty
white
good.
Englishman.
I actually quite like tennis in the background. It's the
Oh,
old-
that's a fun one. That's a fun one. Problem is, I feel like I have to take a little bit too much attention to it.
I just hear the rally and it's like, dink,
Oh,
and then
that's
when there's
fair.
like a dink,
So
and I'm
my
like, oh, someone's done a chip shot.
So with the careers, as I was trying to lead into that, but I failed horribly. Yutori Maashi's most two-played champs in his career is Ezreal and Varus. Yutapons is also Ezreal, but then it's Zaya, Caitlyn. Varus is 13 games, whereas Yutori Maashi has played 36 games on Varus, and it's his second. 48 games on Ezreal, and like Yutapon has played 34 games. That's still less than his second place of Varus. Like, I think Yutori Maashi, when he's like, wait, my babies are good again? Oh,
To be happy with it.
buddy. But then
That's
also,
a fair point.
Yutapong's probably going to be in the same place as like, oh, my Ezreal's fucking broken again. And these are
Yeah.
both players who have already played these champions and gone, oh, fuck, I get to free
I-
win again?
I think the other thing is the support players alongside them. Gang plays Karma,
Yeah, it's
and
all gang,
Senna.
dude. It's
And
all
it-
gang.
and if we are looking at, we saw the Varus as the poke build and Ezreal as a poke build.
Oh my
with
god,
those
that
two
Senna
champions.
was disgusting.
And what you can do, like they destroyed turret at like 7 minutes. They didn't get that many kills. They didn't get that many kills. They
God.
just ran over the bot lane.
But I
Like,
think okay. So
pure.
the caveat there is again. I've mentioned it before. I think Axe's bot lane are not the best at laning, and
is.
that was versus
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah.
And they picked an Ezreal Yumi that game, when
That
Ezreal
was-
Yumi can get poked out. So I think
Yes.
that was a stacked deck for them.
Sure,
Again,
but
I'm not,
that's my
I'm not-
issue, right? Is I think DFM can stack that bot lane deck doing. Also, I mean, potentially so
Yeah.
could you try Miyoshi and Enti, who does definitely play Morgana, right?
And that's what I was gonna say. Yutori Miyashi and NC, like there was a game in their week 6 or might have been week 7 after their loss to Rascal Jester, where they just like took an 8-minute solo tower as a Aphelios Karma, I think it was.
But both bot lanes have done that. Remember?
Oh no,
in
it was
the last
Aphelios
2 weeks.
Thresh against Senna Shen.
Yes.
And that I'm trying to remember who was playing that. I think it was
Yuhi
Verncourt.
was
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the
it's
Senna,
Verncourt.
not elite.
And they just trashed that lane.
I mean, this also does well for Gango. I mean, the thing is, I don't know how long Archer has played League for. I'm guessing at least 5 or so years, but I don't know how long he's played League for. He's a brand new rookie, and the problem is
That's the big thing.
and like that's it. Gango has been playing professionally since he was on Samsung White back in 2014.
2014,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
June 2014 is when he joined Samsung White. He was on
He
Team
was the
M-
trainee. He never played for them.
No, but he would have been around team houses and actually like getting the practice in
Like,
those metas.
yeah, and
right?
that's
Like,
just it's just
versus-
learning champions and playing in the highest level, right? In
Your,
in
your,
in
your
practice
older
mode.
siblings, so to speak, in the role are deft and bloody input their best.
Yeah.
Some of their best. Like, that's pretty insane.
And
That's
like,
huge.
and he's got his currently only professional pentakill is on Ezreal, a champion which is currently very good at the moment. So like, and his career stats doesn't lean to that one. Ezreal is like 7th or 8th or some shit like that. So like,
he also and Gang also plays Draven as well.
and Gango's
Yeah.
also played very mixed. He's had like weird seasons where he'll play like one champion for the whole split and then we'll move on to a completely different one. So yeah, I think these AD carries are gonna get interesting. Let's go on to our next topic, if you ladies, gentlemen, don't mind me from saying so. Boogie. Jungle pool. How does that transfer over to other junglers? So I
Yeah,
believe this
who
was
plays the weird stuff.
Initialized. This was your point that you brought up. Yeah, could you expand on that for me, please?
So effectively, like as a bit of a broader point, the jungle pool, at least in pro play, has seemed a little bit stable for a while, but kind of the last couple patches, right, have started adding in some buffs to a number of other junglers. And I know Nymaera, you mentioned before, you kind of think there's some other weird stuff in, and Boogie's kind of been on the forefront of bringing in some weird stuff. We asked some questions about what is in his pool, and he pulls out the Echo, he pulls out the Nidalee, looks really good on those champions. Is that how are other junglers going to deal with that? Do they have answers? Is it something we're going to see a little bit more around? And similarly, is there more in the tank? Because we know he plays Nocturne, and are other people practicing that one too a little?
Nocturne's also a flex pick as well.
Right.
In fact, it's actually
So
getting
Zeka-
nerfed on patch 10.7. Nocturne mid.
So Zeka.
And I think both of them are very strong right now, so kind of strike while the iron's hot. Playoffs are on this patch, and we know that they're strong. I don't think anyone else is going to pick up Echo Jungle. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. Blank.
I could still steal and
maybe.
blank
I
potentially.
mean, they've got
doing it.
like a month, right?
Yeah.
Like if they
And
make it through
yeah.
this, they've got a month. But then it's only 2 other junglers.
But
And we know that like both of them play Kiana, right? They brought that back, and
I don't know if it's
particularly
worth
I think
it, right?
the Echo is something they could definitely think about.
So Echo is very much a team fight kind of jungler, though, the way that Boogie plays him, and I'm not sure that he ends up getting more bang for his buck out of that pick than pretty much anyone else. And if you don't get ahead on the Echo, well, or rather, if you fall behind on that pick, you feel very, very useless. And I think that Sengoku and DFM are not ones to take risks with picks which would lose you the game if they fall behind. So
Sure.
I'm wondering if they would subscribe to that mentality. It'd be interesting if they did, because it would then go against my own narrative of that. Obviously, it might not be something that they've thought about at all. I don't know if Boogie's champion pool will affect the rest of the league. I think everyone else has kind of settled into what's working for their teams, particularly in the case of Sengoku, they need a confident jungler and mid, really. If they're not playing confidently and they don't manage to get some priority around the map and know the limits of their champion and all this other stuff, we're talking about Blank being very streaky, then they don't really have a stable platform to make plays off of.
To throw him back, when Blank was originally picked up for SK Telecom, now T1, he was picked up because he wasn't it.
Yeah, for sure. Back in season 6, yeah.
So I mean, like, if that's going to be something versus V3 as a potentially contended pick, or like because
it's a very different pick now than
I know. Oh, she is, but like, there is definitely the mechanics there, so maybe I could see it go.
I think just this kind of Boogie has shown that he will play what everybody else plays, like the Gragas, Elise, Lee Sin, Rek'Sai.
Jarvan.
He's happy to play these. He hasn't actually played Jarvan yet.
Has he not?
No, I'm looking at his stats page so far. He's in the spring.
He definitely does play it. He's not played it this game.
Yeah, 100%. He probably knows how to play it like beautifully. But just like he will conform somewhat to the beat of his of the meta drum, which is something I'm going to go on to. But he also is very happy to go on the meta drum of himself. A player in the LJL that has done this for years is Syros. Will beat to the meta drum to a point, but will also beat to their own drum. Difference is Syros is now seeing there's like problems now when other players are aware and what you're doing and how to play around X, Y, and Z. Boogie hasn't had that yet, and I think it's gonna take junglers potentially the whole season to even start figuring out how Boogie works, because it's
also remember,
so
like,
different.
Boogie was playing last year, and he played at MSI, and he took games out in the group stage against first seeds from the world regions. You know, this guy, there's something to be said about actually, maybe you're waiting for the time, it's like, oh, I finally understand how to play against this guy, before you've actually realized, wait, this guy's just really damn good.
Or he just wins worlds. Like, it could be the kind of thing where he just, like, he eventually
gets onto a team in the LPL or something, and then...
Or just NA finally actually lets a team...
IG Boogie has a nice ring to it.
Ooh, it does. No, C9 Boogie. C9 Boogie.
Blab is pretty good too. Either way, also
he is. Yeah.
Like, the reason we're having this conversation is because it's difficult to know what teams have been hiding in the last few weeks of regular season, especially when they were so compressed, when a lot of stuff was on the line and you don't want to take risks. What have teams been hiding for playoffs? And things like the jungle pools being changed a little bit. Like, there's been we've talked about it a little bit before on podcast. I want to say, like, things like Brand, Zyra, Morgana, all suddenly got sort of buffs to their way they play the jungle. Is it something we maybe see coming as sort of a curveball to get games won in playoffs?
I think you have to make them a flex pick. I think you can't just show your hand unless it's like round 5.
Morgana, Zyra, definitely I could see that being for people.
I don't think Zyra. I don't think right now.
I
don't think it's good enough flex pick. I think it's too risky because
it is a risk.
There are so many mid laners which just delete Zyra. And she can suffer in CVTs as well, whereas Morgana
you play Zyra surely as a support jungle and you flex it through that. But even
but
then, the support is pretty weak still. She still needs a little bit of a buff there.
I want to say, didn't Vedius kind of put a little bit of a word
to
but
Vedius picks to watch on always the picks to watch isn't the most infallible thing ever.
No, it's not.
And also, like, I still think jungle Zyra just isn't good. Yeah. I think it's the
I also
least
can't remember if it's 10.6 where those changes come in.
Exactly. So I think
I thought it was 10.5, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
I mean,
So
also
we saw,
Brandon
like, the
Morg and
bruises.
all these other ones getting better in the jungle. A lot of these buffs are coming through in the next
So
few
like Talon,
patches.
Zed, Garen, Darius,
Yeah,
Mordekaiser.
that was 10.5, 10.4, 10.5.
I think there is a chance we see Poppy jungle. I think
That's a
we'll
thought.
see that into
Thought.
something like Callista. I think you can do
Yeah.
that because she has to pop to auto attack, and that means she
Sure.
grounds herself, and that means she can't auto attack.
And the
which
Qs are
really-
slow as well, which is
And the Qs are slow
Yes,
alongside
yeah.
things, yeah. So there's a lot of reasons why I think Poppy could make it back in there, and also is very good going to team fights. I think Morgana being a flex pick between support and jungle could happen. Happen. It also might even be a mid lane pick that Pyrion or Ceres pick up, something like that. Because, you know, I don't think Morgana mid is awful. I think it's okay.
I think it's
So
fine.
it could actually be a three-way flex, and the more flexibility a pick has, the more powerful it is in the current meta. Well, in any meta, really, just because of the way you draft. I think Sengoku might end up picking something like that. I don't... Yeah, and then...
last thing, I think, as well. Just the fact that Maokai is looking a lot better as a champion right now. And team fight tanky top, come flex to mid. We saw Bjergsen pull it out to interesting success. Definitely has a lot of room, lots of engage, dives well, is tanky, hard to deal with, scales super well.
We actually might see Maokai mid into Zoe. We saw that tried by TSM, because basically what happens is Zoe portal jumps forwards into your face, you just follow her back with the W. And like she misses all your skill shots.
Jump into me,
That's
I
what
dare
Leona used to
you.
do as well. That's what Leona used to do. So yeah, well,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So I think that we might see a bit of Maokai. I also think we should see some Shen. I think Shen, particularly because Nap plays in the league, and I think Paz might be able to pull it out as well. With the Hydra and the Sunfire buffs, I think we might see some of that. I'm not 100% set on that though. I think, yeah, I would have quite liked to see actually Cog pick that up at some point in their series, because I think that would have been a better protection pick than the Karma. That would have been really nice. But
alas,
yeah, I think that Maokai could very well make his gnarled way back onto the Rift.
I hope
don't...
he doesn't. I hate that champion. I just don't
yeah,
like him. Don't like him. I liked also old Maokai, not new Maokai.
Yeah.
I liked his old ult.
His old ult was so disgusting.
So cool! It was so cool!
hard to balance.
It's like, he takes like reduced damage from everything for forever.
It was so
Rod of Age as well for actual damage. It was
had like 100% ban rate at Season 4 Worlds.
It was so cool, but I missed the ult.
Season 4 was the beginning of like the hyper tank meta, and just like
Cabo Shard in Season 5 on Gambit on Maokai did very silly things.
Wasn't he like 18-0?
Yeah.
Oh no, it was SKT on Maokai 18-0. Marin. And then like Marin went to China and his win rate died.
I mean, RIP.
Along with the Rumble.
RIP. Yeah. Anyway, after all of that meta talk, I think it's now time that we get relaxed. I mean, we've all probably just woken up because it's...
I actually did.
It's the afternoon, so I mean, it's not like we're doing anything else. So let's get ready to go back to bed for a little bit of a nap time. With some small talk.
He's on CGA, that makes a lot of sense.
With some small talk. I'm not saying that we get in bed with nap. Let's go have.
You're gonna rename this to Pillow Talks. Is this what you're trying to do with it?
No, God no. Actively trying to do anything against that. Our lovely community out here has given us some questions. We asked our community if we could have some questions, and they graciously gave us some questions. Potentially in the future, we might try and do something in the future with this. Maybe giving a prize out to the person if they give us a really good topic, potentially. Who knows? One day in the future, we have high hopes for everything we do. As we
will give you a shout out either way.
Oh, 100%. 100%. So
that's all you really need. The recognition.
Our
the LJL
first
Officially Unofficial
question comes from... oh, God, I hate
Do you want me to pronounce it?
Yeah.
Ichishiki, if you're pronouncing that properly.
God, I can't even...
Ichishiki.
Ichishiki.
There you go.
That's it. Yeah.
Asked us the question, LJL's Rookie of the Split. Now, there's only 4 rookies for this split for us. So,
pretty much, I think.
You gentlemen have the choice of Pooh from the SoftBank Hawks. You have Honey, also from the SoftBank Hawks. You have Archer from V3 Esports. And you have Hyde from Axis. Now, Hyde's the one that people might get angry at us for. He never debuted on a professional team and never played a majority. This is his first time fully debuting as a professional player. So that's the only one we have to give a little bit of caveat to. Oh, and Pooh Had only played in Challenger leagues, hadn't actually played on a professional league. This was his first time playing on a professional league.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any contest here. Archer made it into my top 10 power rankings for playoffs.
Yeah,
He's been such a force to be contended with. He's had a good split. He's had some ups and downs. He's had some real standout moments. So for me, it would have to be Archer.
I agree. I was pretty ambivalent towards him for half the split until I saw V3 versus the Hawks, where him and Reina pulled out some absolute style in that mid lane. While I think Reina has been the better half of the duo, I think Archer has consistently improved.
I
And
voted
playoffs with...
Archer as my player of the week for player 1, I believe, actually, in his role. Don't know.
And he's been really, really good. He's stepped up a lot. I think I've liked his Varus. I've liked his Misfortune. He's not a bad Aphelios either. Like, there's some good stuff coming, and it's all coming online at the right time. So for me,
I would definitely agree. Archer is definitely exciting me so far.
I mean,
we've seen countless players, though, come in from their rookie split, have a pretty good showing, and then fall into mediocre results there and for after. They seem to have all the pressure on them for that first split. And then after that, they're like, oh, well, I can do this. And then they kind of fall into this weird kind of limbo mid to lower mid tier, where they're still good enough to not be kicked off, but they're not good enough to really light the world on fire. So I would agree. Archer is definitely exciting. And maybe we'll see these other rookies in their second split, maybe seeing a bit more. Seems like Nymaera wanted to say something, so I'm giving him the opportunity.
No, I was actually just yawning there because I put in coursework yesterday and was like awake at 5:30 and then got like 3 hours sleep.
Very, very good, sir. Focus on your personal health. It's not like you've got anything else to do. You can't go outside, so I mean...
Very true.
We will never sleep, because sleep is for the weak.
Sleep is definitely for the weak. We have our second question from Elfin. But there's no E there.
The thing is, I like the way this works. It's because obviously Elfin, spelled ELF, is going to be taken wherever you go. LPPHIN, it's never going to be taken. So I appreciate that way around the system. Sir or Madam, that's good stuff.
Okay, fair enough. Talking about elves, they asked the question for us of the LJL's international hopes and dreams and chances of achieving them. So what are our hopes and dreams, and then also what are the chances of any of these teams to achieve them?
Group stages.
So I think the dream is group stage. I think that's always got to be the gold standard. Well, that's the next step.
Yeah.
In terms of what's our chance of achieving them, my problem is DFM rely on winning lane a lot, and this is the same as so many first place seeds. I think if you're a team looking to do well internationally that relies on winning lane to achieve your game plan, that will fall apart when you reach up against higher levels of competition. It's just not as consistent at the higher levels. And when you look at DFM, which do work around Ebby being very strong on the top side of the map, and then having like Utapon and Gang, and he is strong, he is, yeah. And particularly in this region, Ebby is a win condition in and of himself. We've talked about this so many times.
He is, yeah.
I think that Seros's champion pool has sometimes hamstrung him, and Steel's had some lackluster international performances. What would be really interesting is that if DFM didn't go internationally, do you think there's another team that, even though domestically they might look a bit whatever, do you think any of the other teams would not have these issues?
So my biggest problem is there's not an actual true super team in the LJL. Like, you can argue DFM were the super team, but like the problem is their main two star players, which we've all agreed on, is in top and support. They're the only two we fully undoubtedly say the best two players in the region.
We all agreed on that.
Are in bot and top. They're in support and they're in the top lane, right? These are two lanes historically and are proven through Riot's balancing system. They don't want the definitive carries to be in either of these roles. They want them to be high impact roles, team fight roles. These are not roles where you're meant to basically decide the win of the game or how the air of the game goes. Jungle, to a point. Steel, very good. But I don't think he is boogie super good. Also, it's not... Like, Syros is very good in the mid lane. He's not Bjerg. I'm sorry, he's not Faker. Right? He used to be seen as that. This split has definitely put it on a back burner for me. Yeah, but you can't have a career off of one champ. Faker definitely hasn't.
He had one dodgy game on Galio in the last week. That
Yeah,
was
but the problem is, like, he doesn't light up the game outside of his Heimer.
No, he doesn't.
His
He
Ziggs
doesn't create.
is fabulous.
His
in
Ziggs is
terms of
good,
his
but like, it's not.
his
It's like,
Syndra is
no,
very
his-
good.
but he can't play LeBlanc. He can't play Zoe. He can't play all these.
That's
Like,
fine.
The thing is, my worry about DFM is how much they shield Seros in the draft. I think they do take away a lot of aggressive champions that could potentially abuse him, and I think if they haven't done their homework and a new pick comes out of the woodwork and they don't have enough bans,
Which
or
is a
they
problem
just
coming into
don't
group
value it,
stages.
yes.
in group stages, one best, one loss can shove you out, right? I think they have been one game away from groups before at points.
I
can't
think
remember,
if
but...
the LJ
Yeah,
had
they
a
were
super
very
team,
close to winning.
I think if there was a
Okay,
true
like,
super team,
I think
like
DFM are pretty close to that.
yeah, no, the problem is they're 3 roles. Like why?
I still think Steel is up
I think
there.
Utapom's good, but
guys
I don't know if they're the best.
Steel internationally has not been good.
Yeah, Steel is not
Steel
Boogie.
international.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it's not Boogie. And
So I
also,
think
Ardia.
Swan is
Imagine
potentially-
Ardia. Imagine a super team, right? Where you go hypothetical. Oh, you go Air B top. You can keep the bot lane of DFM. That's fine. I don't have a problem with keeping Utapon and Gang together. That's a unit we know that works. So I'm fine with keeping
Yeah, they're
that.
very good. So,
Exactly,
Utapon
right?
has got an argument over Utapon.
Exactly. So and there's already a known work base, right? So you go, okay, that works there. You go Ardia in mid lane. You go Boogie in the jungle, and you go Ebby top. Doesn't that team sound better?
I think that team can get to groups.
That team could get out of groups. I don't know
agree.
if there's any team in the LJL currently that could make it out of groups.
And I think particularly
will
one of the,
say
one of the
before we
big
move-
things is that this season, obviously, we've had Set come through, and Ebby has just looked so good. on that champ.
good.
And
Brand new
Level-
champ
I've
picks
never
it up.
seen Anybody do level 1s like Evie has on set, like
Yeah,
across
no,
the
no,
world, actually.
Gang
His
also,
level 1
Aphelios came out, picked it up immediately.
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
fine.
So I think having
Yes,
these
my bad.
having these
Gang Senna, sorry.
yeah, having these new champions come through and DFM just takes to them like a duck does to water, and then be like, okay, we can draft around them, we have win conditions around them, we know how to play them in lane, in team fights and skirmishes, all this other stuff. It is such a powerful thing to do. There are other teams across the world which, of course, done that, but DFM are not slacking in that regard in any way,
No.
really. I think if you made an LJL super team, you could definitely make it to groups. I think it depends on the group draw, because if you finish first in a group and then like in one of the other groups, in the play-in stages, there was one thing where like it was like Gambit versus C9, which went to like 5 games. We had
It
like
was so close.
it's like you might come up against, if you finish second by dropping a game to someone, you end up like against Damwon or the 3rd Korean seed, and just like okay, all right, maybe winning a best 5 against them, whatever.
Yeah,
So it can
Noguri
depend
comes
on
in,
that.
plays Klepto, Kale, and Vladimir.
No, we won't. I think that whatever team goes from the LJL, we won't be seeing a winless record again. We have seen that from the LJL before.
Yeah.
You know what? If like these.
Can I offer something before we keep going though? Because I've been trying to get this one in.
No, sorry.
So,
Go for it.
so, like,
My bad.
so what specifically I think changes this way. So if I still think DFM win the split was kind of some context. The big difference I think on air is going to make a massive. We've called that actually maybe they're too used to winning lane. I think the fact that on air has changed the way they play the map significantly. I think they play 1-3-1 and the map significantly cleaner. And I think they have played versus like Infernal Soul and big deficits a lot smarter than they have in the past.
True.
And I think that makes a massive difference. And I do think that will give them a bit of an edge coming into play-in.
But they've got 2 gods
so-
on their team, so you kind of expect that.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
but I think that backroom staff change is a big one, especially.
Yeah,
when
I
it
mean,
comes
yeah,
to
it was only
international
addition.
tournaments.
Yeah, it was only an
Yeah,
addition, and nothing else
yeah.
changed, which is huge, right?
And exactly, so I think that does help. That Ebby still looked good on the international stage. But if on top of that you add in a little bit more game sense and ways around thinking, we don't have to win by winning lane because we know how to play smart too, could give them the tip over they need. Could you have a stronger team? Could you add in Boogie and Arya, make that team stronger? Sure.
We need to see how summer really goes to be able to say definitively.
Sure.
Currently,
I mean, MSI potentially still a thing. But we'll see whatever happens with
if
this
it
lane
still
stuff.
happens. I mean, we don't even know if it's even going to happen. Still, it's been postponed now to week 2 of summer split, but
something like that.
But we don't even know if that's still. It might not even happen at this rate. I'm somewhat of my personal opinion that we might not even have MSI now because it will just.
It's really hard to travel is the main problem.
Exactly right, and it might be safer just to keep all the players in their own regions.
I think safety above all else. I think we should not.
And it's a
compromise on
marketing
that.
ploy at the end of the day. And they can give away. They can be like, okay, we just don't do an MSI. They can do that.
Unless they
That
move something,
or-
unless they do something in the off season, if it clears up by then, just
Maybe.
move a lot of the international stuff to off season.
I mean, there is still
nice.
some room for doing something like. It depends how much money Riot want to put onto it. But if they're not doing live venues, then potentially what they do is they put the money they would have put onto that, and instead look to hire private planes so that you're not on and go that way and keep people contact as limited as possible. I
But
think that's
some-
a risk worth taking.
But some places are like having travel restricted to and from them.
Okay, yeah,
so,
China.
Like say, because I mean, remember, there's no travel from Europe to the US.
I mean, where was MSI going to be held? It was.
I think it was going to be.
Was it
I'm trying to remember
America?
if it was Worlds in Shanghai.
I thought
It
Worlds
was in
was.
Worlds in Shanghai.
It might have been.
Worlds in Shanghai. I can't remember MSI. It might have been. Actually, I can't remember. Anyway. Yeah. Tells you how much I pay attention to big announcements.
I was currently looking at a MSI 2020 because they had announced it. I thought.
Yeah.
No, they hadn't. They hadn't actually announced where it was going to be located.
They might have said a region, but not where it was going to be.
Yeah, but
And then-
all it
and that
no,
was-
now it's just postponed. That's it.
Official. Yeah.
So not surprising, but I think that's our hopes. Our third question was brought to us by I'm gonna butcher another name again.
Glowith.
Glayworth. They asked us top 2/3 all pro teams. Now we're not going to cover this explicitly. This is going to become a main topic of a future podcast when we actually get into an off season. So
We'll do it post playoffs. We'll do it.
yes. So
We'll come back to it.
we will. We're putting a pin in this. Like we put a pin
Yeah.
for Rascal Jester's games for the last few weeks. We're going to put a pin in this one.
Yeah.
We're going to come back to this as a full topic for.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to see playoffs through, and then
Yeah.
just like see how certain players do in the big ticket matches, and then we'll have a think about that. But thank you very much for the question. Either way,
Oh,
we will get
absolutely.
around
Thank
to
you
it.
so
And
much. That's why it's
maybe
becoming
the
such a
co-
larger thing.
Yeah. And maybe the conversation we just had about DFM plus Ari and Boogie, Boogie, what would be a pretty good option for a first place
Yeah.
All Pro team at the minute
I think-
anyway. So consider that as a potential thought.
Oh, true.
I think the reason I'd like to see it off like just through playoffs is that there's a chance that I switch Yutori Miyashi and Utapon. I think Yutori Miyashi was my regular season like AD carry, but then it's like, well, how does Utapon perform? Does Archer keep up his run and stuff like that? So yeah, there's stuff to be talked about there.
And our fourth and final question that comes from Happens. It's like finally a sensible name. How LJL teams integrate their Korean imports could be a topic if you guys haven't already talked about it. So I think it's interesting as the LJL has now gone to a place where, like other regions, they have fully adopted that imports are important. That filling up your import slots are a benefit as opposed to seeing as like a deficit. You have to have players from the home region still have to do well. We've seen someone like Axis who now have 3 import slots technically. Well, a half slot because Corporal is a funny one. Is a citizen or not a citizen, but a resident? So whatever.
He did debut in OCE though, so he might count as an OCE.
But he's a
import.
Japanese national, so he.
No, just in terms of like the league stuff, right?
Oh,
So if you
sure, yeah,
debut
exactly,
In a
yeah.
region, If you debut in a region, then like
That's
you count
your
as that
region, but you're not.
So and for instance, like Amazing, he played on TSM and he got
right.
got grandfathered in as a
Anyway,
NA player, which means that when he went back to Origin in season 5 and then later, he actually counted as an NA import.
Whereas now Björksen has done the opposite. He's gone the full tenure to now become a citizen. So now he's American. And then if he went back over to Europe, he's not because now he owns part of TSM. So why the fuck would he do so? Like
true.
Faker, never going to leave. Like just a lock.
Sure. And then it's like,
I think it's
guess we-
interesting. I think the imports are actually benefiting these teams overall. I'm not really thinking of any huge imports that are hurting a team. Really?
Okay, I mean, and also it's like how they integrate them. Like, obviously, we don't have communication with the teams themselves. We don't know
This is all
what they've done in terms of
how what we see on the split,
I
on the
think
rifts and everything.
Sam would probably know more about the whole kind of cultural kind of
So,
stuff
yeah,
between that.
so-
I just want to say, can I just finish my?
Yeah,
little
yeah,
thing?
yeah, go on.
Is that, obviously, we can see the results of certain players coming in and doing stuff, right?
Results-orientated thinking.
Results oriented things that Honor, he is a Korean import into the backroom staff of DFM. We think he has done an absolutely stellar job. He's just done so well in terms of keeping DFM at the top of the table and all that stuff through all that stuff. Stuff like Gango. Gango's come into CGA. he's done very well. Boogie, he's not Korean, he's an LMS import. He has been our player of the regular split. There are imports absolutely tearing it up. Sometimes it is through mechanical ability, and the likes of Gango and Boogie in their own way, but it's not like they do that in isolation. It is within the framework of their team. So I think that we can definitely say, I mean, how do they do it? Well, we don't always know because we're not talking to the teams. Is it working? Hell yes.
Yeah, I think also so there's something as well. It's like most teams have got a Korean import. It's more than one. So like, which does help. You're not isolated in the place where.
Yeah, so Yoshi
Japan
is
is a country which
CGA.
is as some
Yoshi
context.
Gango.
Like last I checked, Japan is in general 98% homogenous. That's kind of terrifying. So it means that of the people in Japan, 98% of them are Japanese.
Granted,
There is very little.
sorry to cut you off here, Sam. Really do apologize, but I think that your point, I want to emphasize it, and link back to Alex. Kazu and Onair, both not from the region. Kazu,
Nope.
French.
Mhm.
Onair, Korean. Kazu obviously
Yeah.
has been in Japan for.
Yeah, Gang and
Fucking
Steel are
centuries.
Korean. Gang and Steel are Korean too.
Exactly.
Oh, I was wrong, by the way. It's not Yoshi. Yoshi's
Ari is.
Well, no,
Ari
I
is.
actually think Yoshi is Korean, but he debuted in Japan, so he counts as a
Aria is Korean, which helps.
and Arya is Korean as well. So they actually have like a lot of
Boogie's Korean,
Korean
remember?
Boogie. No, Boogie's not. I think is Boogie Korean?
Boogie's
Oh, he
Korean.
might
He
be
then
actually,
he
yeah,
then
he is.
he's then he
shit.
went
That's
over
right, yeah,
all
yeah.
over the place. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, my
right.
bad. Yeah, I knew he played in LMS. I thought he was Tony's. No, okay, my bad.
No,
ignore
our
Yeah.
only player that
Okay.
you could argue that one is Corporal.
So there is something about, I think
Blank Empyrean as well, of course.
yeah, of course. Hang on. Let me finish. Okay, so Japan, 98% homogenous. As some context, we live in London. There are more languages spoken in London than anywhere else in the world. Like, that's just not true in
Yeah.
Japan.
Total opposite to us.
Yeah. Whereas Japan has largely been, it's changed over the last 10 odd years, particularly with things coming from the World
Multiculturalism.
Cup,
Yeah.
the Olympics, world becoming more international in general. But Japan has largely been fairly insular in terms of the way it does its culture, in terms of the way it does its media, in terms of the way it does food, and the way it looks at the world. And even things like, so I was a teacher out there for a while. I was teaching kids English, and it's one of those things where there is a cultural thing where, and this is kind of the way it was described to me, was that effectively, if you are British, if you are American, the culture there is if you speak a little bit of a language, you speak a little bit of a language and you'll call that, even if it is like 2 cents. In Japan, Korea, China to an extent, if you don't do it perfectly, you don't speak it. And that's really tricky with a language where you kind of have to be bad for a while before you are accepted speaking.
In the words of Adventure Time, sucking at something is the first step to being sort of okay at something.
Right, and that's a big deal, and that's not really part of the cultural mindset. And so when it comes to living in Japan, you kind of have to adapt or die, because they're not going to adapt to you.
True.
And that can be really tough on players who are coming in as 16, 17-year-olds sometimes, a long way from home in a culture that there is none of your culture around. It's not like you can say that you're in London where you can find your community to be all right. Tokyo's kind of better for that, in fairness. That's where a lot of the LJL is.
Yeah.
Tokyo is better for that. That definitely helps. And Tokyo's a beautiful, amazing city in so many ways.
It is.
Awesome place. I love it to play pieces.
Still never
And that's
been.
really
I wanna
exciting.
go so
I'll take you to
badly.
Scramble Crossing someday.
I've had like two plans fall through to go there. Oh.
Mate, we will find a way for LJL. We'll find a way. We've got to see a match live, dude.
And there definitely are ways of integrating players, and we've seen it done a lot well in other places. But Japanese isn't the most common language to speak unless you're kind of in Japan, so that will help to learn some stuff there. But it's not something you learn in school, where English is something you learn in school.
Exactly.
So that can be difficult. So it can be challenging, and more challenging than it would be somewhere like Europe or Europe in general is actually not super bad, because so many people are having to speak not their native tongue. There is a little bit of kind of more support around that in some. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. And there are other issues we could talk in another podcast around.
Yeah, we can definitely.
Japan and some of the scandals that have been around
Pentagram.
Pentagram, exactly, and the entertainment industry in general. League has been in the past a bit of a Wild West. Japan in the past has been a bit of a Wild West when it comes to entertainment visas, exploitation of young people coming in and trying to get on in the entertainment world. We saw a little bit out in the LJL a few years back, and it got shut down really harshly, and rightly so.
But it still happened.
But it had still happened, and that in itself can be.
And like we're not gonna leave. We're gonna have to leave it a little bit as a hanging point.
No, we need
because,
to,
like,
because
we need to start wrapping things up. But like, we will cover this in more detail. It is an important topic in the context.
we've
of the LJL.
we've mentioned this offhandedly a few times.
So the TLDR is there are things there that help. Tokyo's not a bad city for it. On the other hand, Japan is a tricky place to be somewhere if you don't speak Japanese sometimes. And there are other issues in terms of cultural issues. And again, I'm probably not the best person to speak on this, but inter-Asian issues can sometimes be a bit of a thing. We've seen, like Khan, for example, got in a lot of trouble yelling about, 4 Chinese can't win type thing, that kind of thing. There is still an element of like serious immaturity and occasional racism between players in Asian countries, which
I mean it's part of the nature of going to a place which is so different to yours, right? Like even the difference between
issues too.
Yeah, exactly, like historical ones, like so many things, specifically obviously Korean imports. Korea and China and Japan have interesting relationships historically, so definitely things which we will cover far more in depth in a very deep dive. I think it's also something that we are also planning on releasing a video, which is going to be a very condensed version of everything, which will be an exciting thing, which will be hopefully coming out during the off season when we have infinite time to kind of muddle around, get scripts together, narrate them, and then edit something on top. Hopefully it'll be nice and spicy, but we'll find that out. Anyway, this is actually going to be the end of the podcast. I want to thank everybody for listening so far. I want to thank Initia1ise and Nymaera for being beautiful, stunning, gorgeous, shining and glimmering co-hosts that I rely upon desperately.
We only reflect the glorious light of MaskedSwan.
I mean, I'm stunning. Like, have you seen me? Like, God.
Yeah.
We again are not
X-model, by the way.
X-model, yeah, not like I've been signed up, by the way. Just saying.
Oh.
Anyway, that went into a weird place. Anyway, quick recap. The LJL Officially Unofficial podcast is no affiliation with Riot Games or Riot Japan. This is all done off of our own backs. Everything that you are here and seeing right now is actually brought to us by Pengu, I believe.
Pengaro.
Pengaro. Yeah, I know it because
is it Pengaro or Pengaro?
I'm gonna go Pengaro. For the lovely and like stuff you can see around us, the artwork and everything. You lovely brought us all of that, and plus
it's genuinely amazing.
If you see any other assets, there's a lot of the time it probably might be their doing, so it really does help bring the cast up to a level that we feel very proud of, and everything else. Obviously, you can check out all of our social media. We have a Twitter that we keep very up to date, as well as an Instagram that we're starting to do a little bit more on with some regularity, as well as obviously our Discord server, which you'll be able to find in the show notes. We are very active on there.
Ask some questions.
Absolutely. For next week specifically, why not? Yeah. Also, I forgot to say this in the beginning. I've added it to my notes for the future. All of our podcasts are audio. We literally distribute all of our podcasts on everywhere, from Spotify to literally everything except for SoundCloud, because like fuck, I'm willing to pay for that yet. Still,
I have got a SoundCloud account. I just don't know whether it's a pro one.
Oh, you have to have pro for what I want to do with uploading.
Okay.
Because it's the amount of length and the amount of data.
Yeah, that would do it. Okay.
That makes things frustrating. But as all of us, I want to take the vote and say, take care out there, everybody. We want you all to be in as healthy as possible. Social isolation is being heavily suggested to everybody in the world. Even if you're potentially in a place where it's not such a concern, we would still advise here that you look after yourself, try and do some social distancing, and wash your hands. It's weird to say that, but wash your hands, yeah, filthy bastards, because everybody's dirty, apparently.
And remember, social isolation isn't like actual isolation. Do talk to people, please, guys. Come hang out on the Discord, hang out with your friends, play some video games. Find ways to do stuff. Go to a virtual pub. I've been to a couple already. It's been great. Like that kind of thing where find your way to make sure you are at least talking with people. Man is not an island. Don't be one. play some damn League with your friends. Come talk to us in the Discord.
Yeah, no, I like if you're on a
Don't be
US,
silly.
obviously I'm around to play all the time. If you want to like do a viewing party
We
for
might,
another
yeah.
region or something, I'm happy to hop
Big
hop
time.
into a voice chat and stuff. Just hearing other people's voices is nice. Of course, thank you very, very, very much for listening to our content as well. It makes everything worth it.
Yeah. And for me and for the rest of us, take care and have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the LJL Officially Unofficial. Goodbye.